Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei was betrayed and imprisoned and takes revenge movie. Before we start, please go support FaZe Killer for writing that awesome fanfic. Now let's begin. This is the translated version I made. There will be some wrong he or she calling here because it's translated, so let me clear this. Issei is a male in this story. Prologue. Are you going to leave me for no buck? Issei would yell at them while he had a downcast look and was on his knees, and his anger was very big and palpable. They already took Drake from me, they already killed my bucking parents in my face. You already bucked my girls in my face, what else is missing? That won't happen, we won't let you go until you confess. Isn't that right, love? A certain red-haired girl would speak, hugging a white-haired man. That's right, my dear, it's time for this idiot to tell the truth. The white-haired man would say it and then kick Issei in the face. But from the darkness, a blonde man watched everything with a tray with 2 glasses of what seemed to be alcohol. He saw the whole situation with a face of disgust while his colleagues did all that to his friend. Kiba, can you continue with the torture? We have something important to do. Riaz would order him while she left the room with her Ella's new lover, as well as her Ella's entourage Asia, Zenobia, Keno and Kaneko. Forks. He would answer expressionlessly as the girls and the man left the room. What are you going to do to me, pretty boy? Are you going to cut off my fingers? No, I know. You're going to take out my eye. He would say mockingly, but in a way with a little fear deep inside him. Don't be stupid. I'm not like them. I'll get you out of here. After saying that, she would take out a keychain, and where after a few seconds searching through all the keys, she would find it, starting to remove the shackles that the former security held. Now hit me, so it looks like you escaped. Issei, after a few seconds of thinking about it. He would do it. He would give Kiba a strong blow in her face and stomach, taking all the air out of him. Sorry buddy. Tell Drake I'll be back for him. He would tell Kiba as he jumped out of a window of the club, leaving Kiba riding on the floor from the strong blow he had given him. Time after. It was wonderful, John. I wish I could do it again. Kiba, what happened to you? Riaz would scream, upset, seeing her friend like that, since he had a big bruise on his face. President. The rat escaped. Keno would comment to her president while looking where Issei should be. He escaped. Kiba would whisper, while Riaz was surprised by this. Poor favor. The man now known as John would shout and then kick Kiba. It's obvious that you let him escape. The shackles aren't broken, they're open. He would shout at him and then hit him again. This statement would surprise everyone present while Kiba only panicked. Catch him. He would order Riaz, to which his entourage would obey. Handcuffing Kiba and beginning his torture of him. Somewhere else. Issei, after a couple of hours of running, would fall to the ground because her body could not take it anymore. Curse. He would scream helplessly on his knees while hitting the floor. I could help you. The voice would be heard around Issei. Who are you? He would say, a little scared as he turned to look around. But his body began to take his toll on him, fainting due to the physical exhaustion he had suffered. Issei was now in a completely black space, while he what appeared to be a young boy with completely pale skin, tall and black hair, as well as having eyes completely bathed in blood. In addition to wearing a grey suit. There you are, you know. That dragon was strong. The boy would say while stretching as if he had just woken up. Who are you? I would ask the guy again. Oh, sorry about this. I don't really have a name, and the name my father gave me is very strange, but I'll tell you. My name is TK01, but I like Tank better. The boy would tell him while giving a small bow, then giving a small smile and changing to a more grotesque and larger form, with which he looked much scarier and stronger. Terrifying Issei. I'm supposed to be some kind of sacred gear, although my father wouldn't have liked that name, I honestly don't know what I would call him. The boy would say, returning to his human form and then holding his chin while thinking about the last thing he had said. And what do you want? He would say, even more scared than before to see the true form of the subject. Well, he stopped holding his chin and turned to look at the brown-haired boy. Help you? She would tell him while her palms came together and she gave a warm smile. Do you know? I've been here since that bird killed you. And I know all about you. She would say while walking around Issei, who was on his knees. From your fight against those birds, the fight against the flaming bird, to the fight with that Kakabiel guy. She would say this last while standing behind Issei and giving him a few small pats on the shoulders. But when that dragon arrived, he sealed me supposedly because I'm a threat, but now that he's gone, I have all this mental space. She would tell him while walking away from the brown-haired boy and starting to spin around the empty black space. How are you going to help me? I would answer, a little scared and analyzing all the information I had just received. Easy, my father gave me immeasurable physical strength. Maybe you could use it. I would say while turning my back and looking at my surroundings. And how would you use it? I would say while looking at the brunette over my shoulder, who would raise his gaze and be full of anger and determination. I would say. Take revenge on each and every one of those bastards. I swear I will kill them all with my own hands. Hey, slow down. You know, my base power is very big. Currently you can if you want with that annoying redeed, but that's as far as my power goes. With training you might be able to slightly surpass the Mao's power. But there's no way you can beat everyone, not even with years of training. This would discourage Issei, filling him with helplessness. But his partner doesn't just tell him everything. Dude, my father was a great scientist, he created my other 7 brothers. Maybe if you convince them, they can help you. And there, the 8 of us together have enough power to kill all the supernatural if we want. Besides, my father has a laboratory not far from here. There he was investigating a form of world domination or destruction. I don't remember very well. I would say, letting out a small laugh. So wake up for good. After that little talk, Issei would wake up in the same place where he fainted with the difference that the sun was already rising. So it was all a dream, huh? Issei would think as he got up from the floor and stretched. It wasn't a dream, here I am. His new tenant would shout at him, scaring the brown-haired boy. You know, if you start walking now, we might get there in 3 days. Hank would tell him, pulling out a chair in the mental space. I thought you said it wasn't far away. The chestnut tree would tell him, annoyed, as he began to walk. If I had told you it was 3 days away, you wouldn't want to go. He would answer his partner. So hurry up. Okay. Days would pass, where Issei, determined by his thirst for revenge, would walk without stopping, except to take small breaks. But after much effort, he would finally arrive. Here it is, mate. The tank would tell his partner about him, while the latter only looked down and saw a metal hatch. Issei would open it, then walk in. As he walked down the stairs, he could see that it was quite a long descent until he finally arrived. When I got down to the bottom, I turned on the lights with the help of a switch and I saw a gigantic laboratory with different broken capsules, as well as multiple computers, some broken, while others were simply off. Issei would approach one, finding a PC full of dust, and in front of it, there were 8 spaces for test tubes, however there was only one, which said, HTR00. Brother. I would say it in my mind to Issei, which he would understand. I would wipe all the dust off the PC and then turn it on. There were 6 green dots on a world map, implying that these were Tank's brothers. Mate, you can either go and find my brothers and convince them to destroy all supernatural beings, or if not, investigate here, learn all the knowledge that father left behind. Create an army, and destroy all those who did you wrong. His new partner would tell him while he let out a crazy laugh. I will create an army, but not only the exercise, but I will also make your brothers join me by good means. Or by bad means. He would answer his tenant, and after saying the last thing, a deranged laugh completely full of madness was present, something that Tank would definitely never have expected. Okay, go ahead. In this way, 4 months will pass where Issei learned everything about Tank's brothers, their abilities, their weaknesses. Everything. In addition to a virus that was just in creation, but thanks to Issei he managed to advance it and is now in the testing stages. But somewhere else, there was a seriously injured blonde boy with his left arm missing. Now I understand what Issei went through, you are bastards, rot. Tiba would shout while spitting at Rias. I hope Issei kills them all. Tiba would shout and then bleed to death. Hey Kiba. Rias would whisper as she saw how one of her most faithful disciples died hating her. But that remorse would quickly go away upon hearing the voice of her loved Ella. Well, I guess I wanted that fate. John would say as he stood up from one of the club's chairs. Honey, I have something to tell you. The man would say as he approached Ria's ear from him. You're not used to me anymore, but thank you. After making this statement, he would give Riaz a very strong blow, almost knocking her out on the spot. Madam President. The entourage would shout as they launched themselves at the man. He would have difficulty dodging the attacks of the 3 girls, since Asia was healing Riaz. On one hand, Kaneko would manage to land a blow to Ella's jaw, sending him against the ceiling, then Zenobia would pierce her chest with her durandal, then finish off with an Akeno ray. So he was falling to the ground with multiple wounds, but he just laughed. Honestly, with my base power I can't against all of you, but now I am the new Sekiryu, and I just had to convince your stupid brother with Issei killed some low-class demons, he's a bad dragon bearer of Wales, he deserves someone better and look at me. I would shout this last while the Dragon Emperor's gauntlet appeared and with it multiple boosts would be heard. But when he was about to activate the balance breaker something would stop him. You are not worthy of my power. The sealed dragon would speak, creating a distraction that the heiress of the Gremory clan would definitely not waste. Goodbye, bastard. Riaz would tell him while creating a ball of destruction and throwing it at the white-haired man. Disintegrating him instantly. Riaz would fall to the floor on her knees, as would the other girls, well they remembered both what Kiba told them and what they did to Issei. What did we do? Somewhere else. Ready? Issei would say as he walked away from a computer, then stretched out and grabbed a recorder. The virus has advanced greatly. I have decided to begin the testing stages with living subjects to learn about the development of the virus. It is likely that the subjects will lose their lives, but it is all for science. Then he turned off the recorder and whispered. And for my revenge. After recording his progress, Issei would get up from his chair to take off his robe and put it on a hanger. After that he would enter a bathroom where he would proceed to undress and take a refreshing shower. As the warm water fell on his head, he thought of ways to exact his revenge on him. I should release the virus first, then clone the DNA of Tank's brothers and create a super army. But of course, this would take too much time and I can't tolerate those bastards continuing to do their thing. Or else, finish the virus, launch it and attack all the factions with my army of the dead. But of course, if I do that, I run the risk of being killed in some battle, since all of them together outnumber me. I can also convince Tank's brothers carriers and the aid in the army of the dead to end the supernatural. But of course, it would also take time. I don't know. After thinking about the possibilities, I would turn off the shower, then get out and put on a sleeveless shirt and a pair of shorts. Issei would then begin to train with multiple repetitions and exercises while his muscles gradually increased. What the hell are you doing? The tank would tell his tenant about him while observing what he saw. Your power is too monstrous in addition to the appearance. I want my body to assimilate the power little by little. And in moments of despair, use 100% so to speak, releasing the monstrous form you have. I would answer him without stopping doing his exercises. Is that even possible? The tank would say incredulously upon hearing his plan. According to the information your father left, yes. Besides, I can combine all the powers of all the prototypes and make them into one. Prototypes? I don't understand you. I must have said it a bit confused. Those you know as brothers, their real name is Prototype. In fact you are a prototype. Issei would answer expressionlessly while continuing to exercise. Okay, I never thought I'd know how my father actually named me. Hank would say while having an existential doubt the size of a truck. However, the brown-haired boy continued training while a tiny smile appeared on his face, but a word echoed in his mind. Revenge. Somewhere else. The duo of brothers were seen talking, while on the faces of both of them, one could see extreme concern and remorse. How the hell do we trust that bastard? Serziches would say while holding his head with his hands. This is how I remember Issei's trial. Flashback. Hi to Issei, you are sentenced for the murder of an entire family of low-class devils. Serziches could be seen while he had his arms crossed to see that on his sides were the other two leaders of the biblical factions. No, let me explain. Issei would try to explain everything, but Riaz would slap him. Shutting him up instantly. You have no right to speak, damn murderer. Riaz would speak to him while looking at him in a despicable manner. Then Serziches gave the sentence to Issei. Issei, given to the murder of a family of demons in cold blood. He would say this while a video appeared on a screen where Issei with the help of his Red Emperor glove killed 3 demons, among them a girl. I can explain that. It's just a misunderstanding. But Serziches would continue with the sentence. You are declared guilty of the charges and you will be punished with torture by your mistress Riaz Gremory. After saying this, Riaz would signal Kiba and Zenobia who would disdainfully drag Issei away. End of flashback. Damn. I would add Serziches to then hit the table and in the process scared Riaz. Ani-chan, calm down. She would try to calm her brother down, but he was still lost in his thoughts of her. While they were talking, a couple was seen walking in the human world. They had a date, but they were too late. In order to get home sooner, they decided to cross an alley. While they were walking down a desolate alley, a certain chestnut tree was following them. Honey, I think someone is following us. The girl would whisper to her partner for both of them to stop and turn to look, observing a chestnut tree walking slowly. What the hell do you want? I'd try to scare our protagonist, but he wouldn't let himself be intimidated. Issei continued walking while the subject threatened him. Until Issei was a few meters away from the couple. I love you all. He would say in a dead voice while a macabre smile appeared on his face, followed by a punch that incapacitated the man. The girl only limited herself to screaming while she fell on her back. I thought it would be more difficult. Then, just like with the man, hit the girl and leave her incapacitated. While Issei carried them both like sacks of potatoes and disappeared into the darkness. Chapter 1 Old Friend. Where am I? The girl who was tied up would say while her partner was in front of her. Oh, you've already woken up, I hope you're comfortable, although it doesn't matter much since you won't last long here. Issei would come out from the shadows with an injection that contained a green liquid. "No, please leave us alone." She wouldn't finish speaking since Issei had continued to inject the substance and the girl fell unconscious. "What did you do to him, you bastard?" The boy would try to free himself, but Issei would repeat the action with him, making him also fall unconscious. "Let's start with the experiment." After this, Issei would turn on the electric light and leave the room to see the entire vaccine process through a large window. "So you already have the test subjects, huh?" His new partner would speak to him while he also carefully observed all the symptoms. "I hope this is enough to put an end to the supernatural world." I would answer him while keeping a serious face. "You'll need a lot more power to completely annihilate those bastards." These words would make the brown-haired boy think about Tank's brothers. Issei would decide to go in search of them, but that would lead him to the PC. Where with the help of his knowledge he would be able to obtain their coordinates. "Remember that you have my brother Hunter with you." This would give Issei an idea. He would remember that certain blonde who helped him escape. "It's more effective if someone else has that power than me. It would be much more useful." After saying that to himself, he walked over to a table with several test tubes. They were all empty except for one, which had a purple-blue color and said HTR00. Issei would take it and pour it into an injection gun, then he would take a black trench coat and leave his laboratory. He would walk for several minutes until he would reach Kiba's house. He would knock on the door, but no one would open it. Issei was surprised by this, but without giving it much importance he decided to go to the cemetery to continue with plan B of his tests of him. Somewhere else. The occult club, Syzych's, Graphia, Sona's entourage and Sona herself, among other demons who knew Kiba, were burying him, while everyone was emotionally affected. "I can't believe we did that to her." Riaz would say she looked pretty shaken. "We should have guessed." Akeno would agree with Riaz while she kept looking at the coffin which began to lower with the help of other men. While going down you would see an Issei stunned by what he saw. "Bitches, bitches, bitches." Issei would think full of fury, being about to transform into his 100%, but his partner would stop him. "Calm down, my friend. If you do, they'll hunt you down and everything will get complicated for us." He would talk to his friend about him, who would manage to calm him down. He would hide in the darkness waiting for the Grimoire to leave so he could recover his best friend's body from him. Finally, after a couple of hours they left Kiba's grave alone. He would take advantage of this moment and get to the grave. Using some of his power he would destroy the grave, taking Kiba out, seeing the deplorable state he was in. "Don't worry, my friend, I'm back." After saying this, he would carry Kiba's body and leave the place. Time after. "I guess we were stupid," Riaz would say while she dropped into one of the club's chairs. "And what are we going to do with Issei?" Asia would ask, turning to see Riaz, who didn't have an answer. "I highly doubt he'll want to come back with us, we were a bunch of miserable bitches. We'll have to let him go, even if it hurts Asia." This would break Asia and Akeno's hearts, but she was right. They'd have to let him go. Although our chestnut would not forget them so easily and would look for them. But not in the way they would like. Somewhere else. Issei was seen walking quickly, trying to get to a metal bed. Leaving the blonde there. Later with the help of the gun with the liquid, he would inject it all. The first few seconds nothing out of the ordinary happened, but within a minute Kiba's body began to convulse and foam came out of his mouth and his arm began to regenerate, as did his other wounds, leaving the blonde-haired boy unconscious but with stable vital signs. Issei had just created a stupidly huge scientific breakthrough. He had just discovered resurrection. He also took advantage of the visit to the cemetery to bring a random corpse. I injected it with the formula it had been working on for months. After 30 seconds the dead man would get up without any symptoms before. He got up and tried to attack Issei, but Issei would blow his head off with a punch. "Damn, I have to find a way to control them." He would say it to himself, then retire and go to his PC so he could read both his reports from him and those from the other scientist and find the answer. As he analyzed the documents and reports, he thought about how he would explain to Kiba how he had been resurrected. An hour later. Where am I? Stuttering, Kiba would try to recognize the room where he was. It was a room with multiple metal beds, and it was also illuminated by multiple lights. Kiba would decide to explore that place, trying to get up, but when he did, he would get a very pleasant surprise. "And my arm?" He would say surprised since in effect, his arm had regenerated. After receiving this wonderful news, he would get up from the metal bed and start walking. As he did so, he noticed that the place was somewhat neglected, with piles of dust in some parts, while in others it looked like it had been recently cleaned. Without giving it much thought, he continued walking down the corridor, but something that caught his attention was the fact that the entire corridor was dark, except for one room. Out of curiosity, I walked down that hallway. As he walked forward, moans and groans could be heard. Kiba, his skin crawling, continued to move forward, but suddenly everything went completely silent. Kiba looked out the large window, but found nothing. Strangely, he looked around for the source of the strange noises, but he was pleasantly surprised to turn back and find the source of the sound. Being physically creepy, its skin was grayish-white, its eyes were completely black, several parts showed flesh, and even in others you could see bone. Kiba would get scared and walk backwards, falling in the process. He would see how the being he had just seen also got up and began to hit the window. The terrified blonde would start to run in that dark hallway, but after a while of escaping, he would reach a large door. Since he had no other option but to go back and he didn't want to go through there, he decided to open the door and find out what it was hiding. Indeed, he would open it, and he would see a gigantic laboratory that did have electric light, which meant that there must be someone there. He would look at the place carefully, it was full of computers with different numbers and signs. Curious, he continued walking to find out more, but he didn't know that someone knew about his presence. Kiba kept walking as his curiosity was greater than his fear, but he felt he was being watched. He would turn around, but there was nothing. Without giving it much importance, he would turn around again to continue on his way, but a figure was seen in a dark corner. Kiba, terrified, would try to talk to it. "Who are you?" But he wouldn't receive any answer. In fact, he started walking towards Kiba. The latter, terrified, could not move and remained static in his place while the figure slowly emerged from the darkness. Finally, he had come out and Kiba was in for a big surprise. "Issei." The blonde would shout as he ran to hug his best friend. "Calm down, I'm fine." 5 seconds of a warm hug would pass between the two boys until Kiba would cut the moment short. "I thought you were dead." With a smile of happiness, "I would tell you." "I would say the same, but you did die." The brown-haired boy would try to make a joke, but the only thing he provoked was doubt in his friend. "True, how am I alive?" "I revived you." He would answer, surprising his friend, who would question him about this fact, to which Issei only responded with his entire story, how he found the laboratory, how he met Tank, everything. To then say, "Well, from now on you are the bearer of a new sacred gear, so to speak, why don't you say hello to him?" Kiba, a little confused, would just look at his friend, but then a voice spoke to him with a hello. "What the hell?" Kiba would say into the air while looking around in search of the voice. Issei would only respond to this action with a big laugh. "It's inside your head, you can talk to it whenever you want." Kiba, no matter how much he analyzed it, he couldn't find a logical sense to all the information he was receiving, so his friend wanted him to understand everything better. "Lie down on the floor, close your eyes and imagine an infinite black place." Kiba followed his friend's instructions to the letter, lying down on the floor and closing his eyes, seeing himself in the mental space. After a few seconds, a voice made itself present. "Hey, here I am, my name is HTR00, but you can call me Hunter." The voice would tell him, well, it made itself present in his mental space. Now you could see a boy of no more than 17 years old, somewhat short in height, reaching Kiba's jaw, white hair, as well as eyes bathed in blood. He was dressed in black sportswear, and in addition to the fact that in his hands there was what seemed to be blood, his mouth had quite sharp teeth, but without being exaggerated or abnormal. Kiba, surprised by the appearance, would approach him and look at him from head to toe. "What are you supposed to be?" Still surprised, he would ask him the question, to which the boy would just turn around, giving him his back and start walking, thus stopping in the middle of that infinite black space. "I, along with my other 7 brothers, were made to destroy everything. I was the first of my brothers, I was the prototype 0. My father was obsessed with destroying the factions and all the plagues of our world, so not satisfied with my power, I created my other 7 brothers. TK01, WH02, CHR03, JCK04, BMR05, SPT06, and SMR07. But since my father was an ambitious person, he decided that with my help, we would create the apocalypse. With the help of my powers, I released my brothers all over the world and began research into a virus that would wipe out every living being. But not everything went as I wanted. The demons found out about everything and discovered the laboratory. My father would close his entire main laboratory, which the only way to enter was through a hatch, and he would also take me out of his body with the help of a device to leave me in a test tube for who knows how long, so that later my father would be killed by the demons, or at least that's what I suppose. I would answer something melancholic, making Kiba feel bad for having asked. "I am sorry. I'd try to fix your mistake. But it wouldn't be that easy." "Why are you sorry? We've only known each other for less than 5 minutes. But hey, if it makes you feel better. Thanks." These words would surprise Kiba. "Anyway, I guess the only thing I can do now is avenge him. And for that I need your help and that of my brothers. Now I ask you, are you really faithful to the supernatural?" To which, Kiba, without hesitating for a second, would say, Of course not, those bastards almost killed Issei and they killed me, why the hell would I be loyal to them? This answer would make the hunter happy, so with a big smile he would say. Then it will be a pleasure to give you my power, friend. After this, Kiba would open his eyes, seeing Issei who was reading some pages, but he would realize that he had already woken up. Oh, how did it go? He would speak in a carefree manner while he kept reading the paper. Fine, I guess. Kiba would answer, getting up from the floor and approaching Issei. What's the plan? To which Issei finally stopped reading the files to say, let's get revenge. After this, he would begin to walk, and with a signal he would make it clear for Kiba to follow him, obeying the indication. The two of us are not enough to finish off those bastards, not even all the prototypes together will do anything. Yes, we have great power, but they outnumber us 1,000 to 1. So, we must outnumber us 1,000,000,000 to 1. He would tell him this without stopping walking, just as a smile appeared on his face, although of course Kiba knew nothing of Issei's plan. After a minute of walking, they reached the same window through which Kiba had passed minutes before. Kiba, somewhat scared to remember what he had seen minutes before, would only turn to look at his friend, who with a smile he would say. Appreciate. To the doom of the world. After saying this, a loud laugh would be present, Kiba would approach the window, where the two boys that Issei had previously captured were, but now they were very changed. Both were in a corner each, upon seeing Issei, both would run in his direction and begin to hit the window to try to break it, a completely useless action, since it was made of plastic. The only thing missing is to be able to control them. Once we achieve that, no one, listen carefully, no one, will be able to stop us. It was noticeable how madness was taking over more and more of the being who had previously been a good and kind person. Or of course. He would say this with great fear, while his friend turned his smile into a bigger and more terrifying one. Perfect. She would say, hugging him while a laugh came out of her being her. In another world. Riaz, somewhat sad, walked around the Gremory mansion, looking for something to do. Among several options she found the one that according to her was the best and began to walk towards the Great Gremory Library, a place where a large number of books were lying, some recently read, others that had not even been opened. Riaz arrived at the library, walking through the halls of the Great Hall, looking at each book with her eyes, although none of them caught her special attention. Except for one, this one she had never seen before, the title of this one had red letters, and it said. Prototypes. Prototypes of what? What does it refer to? Those and more questions lay in Ria's mind, the only answer she would know if she opened the book. Since curiosity was eating away at her, she decided to follow her instinct. She opened the book wide, beginning to read the content. While reading it, she realized that this book had been written by her brother, and the date was before she was even born. More specifically, this book was more than 60 years old. At the beginning it had a warning, do not distribute this book in any way, this book contains information for the further study of the prototypes. If this information comes to light, it could create a great uproar. This warning fueled Ria's curiosity further, so she continued reading. About 3 years ago, the scientist named Andrew Carrying created 7 weapons, each one capable of rivaling the mass. These weapons are called prototypes. Their use is the same as that of the sacred gears. The only difference is that no gadget appears at the time of use. It only improves the user's functions and changes the physical appearance of the prototype. These sacred gears were spread throughout the world by the hands of Andrew. Their whereabouts are still unknown, the only thing we know for sure is that 2 prototypes are in the land of the rising sun. Japan. During these 3 years we have been looking for them, but nothing, not a single clue of these. Their names are TK01 and JCK04. Their powers separately are monstrous. TK01 has completely enormous strength. He is capable of breaking concrete walls with his bare fists, or if not, carrying medium-sized cars and launching them through the skies. TK01, he has incredible agility, and he also has the strength to be able to rip your head off after a few seconds, regardless of the power of the latter. It would take a maximum of 30 seconds to rip his head off even a Mao. In addition, he is immune to magical attacks. His height is not much, probably not even 1.5 meters tall, but he makes up for it with the difficulty of being able to hit him with an attack. His last appearance was in the defense of the carrying laboratory. Current whereabouts? Unknown. Bearer. Michelle Smith. Whereabouts of the bearer? Killed by demonic forces in the carrying laboratory facilities. While TK01 is probably the strongest prototype, reaching 2.7 meters in height, he is also the infected one that gave us the most problems. His last appearance was in the forest, 1 kilometer before the carrying laboratory. Current whereabouts? Unknown. Bearer. Yado Haidu. Bearer's whereabouts? Killed by demonic forces in the forest 1 kilometer from the carrying laboratory. The whereabouts of the other prototypes are also unknown. I will update them over time. Riaz was stunned by what she had just read. But that wasn't all the content of the book. There were more pages. The families of both prototype bearers were investigated. Michael Smith had no children, while Yato Haidu had a son, Yuki Haidu. We will keep an eye on this child. All the whereabouts of the rest of the prototypes remain unknown. Riaz, even more curious since they mention her beloved family, decided to continue reading. I read the book for about half an hour, but there was nothing relevant other than updates from each year, which weren't very relevant. Except for one, which was dated 55 years ago, it says. After an exhaustive search of the premises, we have not found the main room, the one where all the information is probably completely gone. We will continue to search. The only one most notable from that point on is from 16 years ago. Yuki Haidu had a son. From the information we know, prototypes are not hereditary, but we will still have Issei Haidu under suspicion of being a carrier of TK01. The whereabouts of the rest of the prototypes remains unknown. This would also have caught Ria's attention, but she went on to read the latest update, which was dated 2 months ago. Issei Haidu ended up being the bearer of the Red Emperor Dragon, as well as being my sister's pawn. Maybe instead of being a threat, he's an ally. We recently went to the lab where we finally found, after 60 years, information. With the help of magic we were able to restore a document with which we found more information about the other prototypes. We found information about another prototype, although its bearer and whereabouts remain unknown. This is WH-02, it gives the user great strength and speed, as well as great resistance. In addition to granting incredibly sharp claws. In addition, the file also said something that surprised us. This was the fact that the bearer can fall into madness. This is triggered depending on the time that the bearer lives with the prototype. If the bearer only talks to the prototype more than at essential times, nothing will happen to him, but if he considers him practically a friend or brother, he can say goodbye to his sanity. Everything gets worse if the bearer is alone most of the time. The first symptom is the fact that his personality becomes cold and emotionless, but if he has lived with the prototype long enough, he can fall into madness in a matter of seconds, and recovering his sanity at that point is very difficult. These data surprised Riaz a lot, while she wondered what these prototypes would be like and if they could be good pieces. Chapter 2 Allies and Enemies. Riaz would close the book, then take it to the place where she found it. Prototypes, huh? Sounds interesting. Irideed would tell herself mentally, while she put the book away and thought about what the other prototypes would be like and if they could become her allies. Irideed would leave the library to be able to walk towards her room. As she walked, the doubt of Issei really has that sacred gear. She wandered through her mind. That was echoing in her head. As she walked forward, she held her jaw with her right hand while she thought about that possibility. Is it true? But in that case, I would have felt it when I reincarnated him. Those doubts tormented her until a worse one joined the show. Guilt. From thinking so much about Issei, she remembered what he had done to her, how he had treated her. She stopped dead and remembered that moment. I was a bitch. Irideed would tell herself, while several ideas came to mind. One was to look for Issei, but even if she found him, she honestly doubted very much that he would even speak to her, or that he would even let her live. Besides, it was very unlikely that he was still alive. His injuries were too serious. But she wanted to imagine that he was alive. Different scenarios were running through her mind, most of them happy, where she and Issei were together again. Until something brought her back to reality. She had crashed into a wall, hitting her face in the process. Damn it. Riaz would say to herself, cursing that moment. She just refused to walk, only this time with her feet on the ground. After walking a few seconds, he would reach her room, entering and lying down on her huge bed. While thinking about the content of that book. Maybe if I face my brother, I'll get some answers. I'd think, having that chance, then close my eyes and fall into a deep sleep. Somewhere else. 3 days later. There you are. The brown-haired boy would say to himself, while letting out a small one, amused to laugh. This device is very useful, it was enough to investigate the first carrier. And that's it, now I know where each of the prototypes is. BMR-05 was in the land of freedom, the United States. SMK-07 is known to be in Holland. SPT-06 is in Canada. And finally JCK-04 was in Japan, so he would be the last to be recruited. Everything was ready, their first stop would be the BMR-05 prototype since, according to the notes, its ability has a poorly developed phase of the virus, so by fusing with the virus they were manufacturing, it would be much easier and faster to create item. It's decided. Kiba. He would give a loud scream, one that would be heard throughout the section of the laboratory they inhabited. What's going on? Kiba would arrive seconds later, he was wearing a lab coat and a pair of glasses. Pack your bags, we're going on vacation. I would tell him coldly, but in a somewhat humorous way, showing how his madness was gradually advancing. But where? We'll go for BMR-05, it's located in Houston, Texas. "We'll leave at dawn, we shouldn't take too long." He would explain coldly while putting on a raincoat, the same one he had left in a few days before. "Okay, but where are you going?" Thibault would tell him, since if they left in a few hours, there would be no point in him getting ready to leave. "You'll find out." With a smile full of madness, he would say to his cameraman, who would only look at him in amazement. Hours later. Thibault was packing his various clothes into a small suitcase, but he heard the hatch being opened, implying that his friend had returned. Thibault would go out to see if it was indeed him. And indeed it was, except that he came with 2 large bags, both of which hid the contents inside, although both had small drops of blood which were obviously not from the brown-haired boy. "What the hell?" she would say to Issei, who had blood on his knuckles and hands. "Well, a long story." I would turn my eyes elsewhere and then begin to tell the story. Flashback. "Good evening, how can I help you?" The beautiful woman who was working would attend to our protagonist. Of course. She would happily move closer to the glass that separated them both so she could whisper something more easily. "This can end in 2 ways, you give me all the money in this place and you get out of here alive, or you don't and I'll make sure you never see the light of day again." She would tell him in a whisper, although a sickly smile was present on her face. The frightened woman did as she was told, beginning to put the money into 2 bags. But while she was doing so, without the brown-haired man noticing, she pressed the panic button, calling the police in a matter of seconds. It was finally over. Issei would take the money, while the few people who were also in the bank appreciated how they had just been robbed in front of their faces. "It was a pleasure to be with you." He would not finish, as the light of a helicopter would illuminate him, followed by a voice from a microphone. "Surrender yourself and no one will get hurt. Drop the bags of money and drop all your weapons." Apparently the person in charge of that operation was giving him instructions, to which Issei complied. He dropped the bags of money, letting them fall to the pavement. He opened his trench coat, revealing an elegant black suit vest, a white shirt underneath the vest and a red bow around his neck. But at first glance he did not appear to have any weapons. 2 police officers approached Issei and inspected him, and indeed he had no weapons. As the officers checked the brunette would put his arm in front of his chest, with his palm open. He would then slowly close his eyes and scream. 01. He would then clench his fist and likewise suddenly open his eyes to see how his eyes were bathed in blood and his muscles increased exaggeratedly. Going from being a somewhat muscular person to becoming a person who could easily take part in a bodybuilding competition. "With my 40% it's enough to defeat these trash." After thinking this, with a punch I would blow off the head of one of the policemen while I would grab the other one by the neck so I could hear the crunch of his trachea, resulting in his death. As a result, the police forces would detonate their weapons against the brown-haired man who only received the shots, while with agile attacks and movements, he killed his attackers. "Shit, we need refu." It would end as the brown-haired boy would hit him, which would cause his head to separate from the rest of his body. Issei had already finished off everyone, so he would approach the entrance of the bank and take the money. He was about to leave, but he remembered a promise. "Hello." The chestnut would approach the glass where it had previously been. When he looked inside he would see nothing, but he knew where what he wanted was. With a firm blow, he would break the glass, allowing him to enter. "There you are." He would say sickly to the girl who had given him the money. Now she was with her knees to her chest, while a face of terror and sadness could be seen on her face. Issei would just grab her by her face while he took her out of her hiding place. Then he would pick her up and tell her. "I'm a person who keeps his promises from him." After that, he would let out a laugh full of madness while tightening his grip on the girl's face. To finally hear how the aforementioned girl's skull cracked and her body fell dead. The chestnut would leave the bench to start running through the streets of Kuo. End of flashback. "Don't you think that was a bit unnecessary?" Thibault would tell him while the brown-haired boy took off his trench coat, which was quite damaged. "That trip isn't going to pay for itself." Issei would explain to his subordinate, who would ask the following question. "Won't that cause us problems?" The blonde-haired boy would say, which would only cause the brown-haired boy to laugh. "Please, don't give anyone the pleasure of living." Full of madness he told him, to which Kiba would only trust him. Although that couldn't be further from the truth. That act will pay the price. Somewhere else. An agent arrived at the crime scene, his high rank was obvious. He was wearing a very large bulletproof vest, covering his entire torso and shoulders. In this vest he had the Kuo police badge on most of his abdomen. In addition, under this shell, he was wearing a navy blue shirt. As for his face, he was a person of around 40 years old, with black hair and brown eyes. And finally, what characterized him the most, since part of his equipment is a large shield of around 2 meters, wide in color, and capable of stopping high-caliber bullets. "Captain Winters." The police officer would say, addressing the aforementioned. "What happened?" With a deep and imposing voice, the captain would say to his comrade of him while he left his large shield at his feet of him. He robbed a bank, although he didn't use any weapons. Surprised by the man's answer, he turned to look at him with an intrigued face, implying that he should give more details. He only used his fists, he received all kinds of shots, but nothing hurt him. He has killed many good officers with his fists. This would get the captain's attention from him. Identity? I would say coldly, while trying to remember a big detail. Unknown, the security cameras didn't catch it, it was too fast. And it left no witnesses. The officer would continue giving more details, but Winters didn't pay attention, he was focused on something else. Until he remembered a small detail, since he knew of certain beings that could do that. I know who can help me. Winters would retreat to his vehicle, leaving the officer with his mouth open as he was practically talking to himself. The captain would arrive at his vehicle, get in, then take out his cell phone and enter several digits. Forks. The male voice was heard behind the line. I need you here immediately. Winters would firmly tell him, then say something else. I think it has to do with your kind. And why would I have to go? I would say in a defiant tone, to which the captain would only respond. He could have taken my men's heads off and the bullets didn't do anything to him. Does that sound familiar? The voice on the other end would remain static, then say. I'm going there. After that the call would be cut off, so the captain would put away his phone and turn to look at the roof of the car. What the hell are you hiding? Hours later. Finally. Tired, Kiba would get out of the taxi while Issei paid the fare. Quick, our flight leaves in half an hour. I would tell him coldly, so as to enter the airport. Why did you buy the tickets for 7 in the morning? Kiba would tell him somewhat tired since he had not been able to sleep well. That's better, we'll get there earlier and we'll be able to leave earlier. She would tell him coldly while not even bothering to look at the blonde. Both boys would be there until their flight left. Bound for Houston, Texas. While both boys were flying over the Pacific Ocean, a certain Reed woke up. The idea of prototypes had not gone away, I had been thinking about it for several days. And he decided to go and investigate on his own. He knew perfectly well that he might not find anything, but his curiosity about him was greater than his fear of him. With that in mind, he would get out of bed to go to breakfast. His plan was simple, he would just eat and go where his brother's reports of him pointed out. He would go down the stairs, hoping to meet his brother. But he wasn't there. How strange, it's always at this time. Riaz would think, as she headed to the kitchen, to eat. An hour had passed, Riaz had already eaten and prepared herself. In her room she decided to create a magic circle to the forest where the laboratory was located. And indeed she did, she teleported to the aforementioned forest. Just a few meters before arriving. Riaz would start walking while looking around, thus preventing something or someone from surprising her. After a few seconds of walking, she would reach an area without any trees nearby. She would see what was a cave, with a metal door that covered its entire entrance. In it, both bullet impacts and burns from magical attacks were noticeable, as well as dents from blows. Riaz was about to leave the few trees that remained when she heard a voice approaching. So this is it, right? The boy's voice would be present. While Riaz hid behind one of the trees. The boy entered Riaz's vision. He had arrived backwards, although from his voice, it was likely that he was 14 years old. He was hunched over, so his height could not be correctly defined. However, in that state, he seemed to be less than 1.5 meters tall. He was wearing sportswear, black shorts with white lines, and a hooded sweatshirt, not allowing his head to be seen. He also had a pair of black wool gloves. Riaz at that time would remember the other Japanese prototype. JCK-04. I can't believe it, it's him. She would say mentally, excited, since she had a secondary plan to find that prototype and join him to her clan. So this isn't it? The boy continued talking to himself, although he didn't seem to be talking to himself. A few seconds of silence later, the boy would start running through the forest, to which Riaz would not allow her to lose sight of him. The boy would stop and return to his normal form, finally his height could be known for certain, he was now around 1.67 meters tall. It didn't seem like an unusual place, just an area surrounded by trees, just another part of the forest. But for him, he would start to step on part of that area, as if he were looking for something. Bingo. The boy would say as a metallic sound was heard, he would bend down and open a hatch, then enter and close it behind him. Riaz would wait a few seconds, then tiptoe towards the hatch. She would get on her knees and listen intently. Until finally she heard nothing. Riaz would stealthily open the hatch, and then carefully and silently climb down. Riaz would finish going down, to quickly hide next to the door, because where the stairs ended was a small room, with only space for the stairs. So this is it, huh? The boy was looking around the labs, where there were plenty of computers and signs that someone had been living there. Stop. Riaz would say, coming out of her hiding place while charging a power of destruction in her right hand. The boy would turn around, finally revealing his face to him. He was blonde-haired, with amber eyes. His face was one of surprise, but also a bit of fear. He would begin to move his hand to his chest, but Riaz would increase the power of her attack, scaring the boy more. Okay, let's start with the questions. On another continent. The two bearers had gotten off the plane, they would wait for their minimal luggage and go to the address indicated on a tablet that Issei carried. Is it the same as the PC? Tiba would tell him, to which Issei would agree. It has the same software as the PC, it was impossible to bring that piece of shit. Without taking my eyes off the device I would answer him. Tiba looked out of the window of the vehicle at the beautiful city. The vehicles were heading from one place to another, each one preoccupied with their own affairs, without suspecting what had come to them. They would finally arrive at the place where BMR-05 lived. It was rather an unusual place, it seemed like a dangerous place, too dangerous to be honest. And the house was quite peculiar, it was a one-story house, with a small grass area, although the grass was dry, and it also stored multiple bags of garbage. They would both enter this place, reach the porch, knock on the door. Nothing. Issei would call again, but still nothing would happen, the only thing that could be heard was the engine of the cars that passed behind them. A little desperate, the brown-haired boy would make a sign to his companion, even if he understood it. Claws would emerge from Kiba's hands, so he could climb the entrance and get onto the roof, to crawl to the back of the house. Upon reaching the other side, he would see that behind him was a patio with large wooden boards of at least 2 meters, acting as fences. He would climb down from the roof and focus his attention on the back entrance of the house, seeing the typical sliding glass door. Peeking through it, he would be able to see a light source in the dark house, somewhat small, but it was all there. I think he's inside. He would say through an intercom that he had taken out one of his pockets a few seconds ago. Okay, get ready to enter. The brown-haired man's voice could be heard from the other line. Kiba would obey as he got into position to attack the weak door while Issei gave a countdown. Until it reached 0, the two boys would synchronously burst into the house. The startled man would get up from his seat to bring his hand to his chest, but Issei would stop him. Wait. I would scream for the man to stop his action. Are you BMR-05? The question had already been asked, to which the shadowy man would agree. Kiba would then approach the switch, turning it on. Revealing a man of about 28 years old, he was the same height as both boys, he was black-haired and had brown eyes. The man was overweight, not quite obese, but overweight. He was wearing casual clothes, a navy blue short-sleeved shirt, jeans, and a pair of shoes. And you are? The man, still in a defensive pose, would ask the question, to which she would quickly answer. My name is Haidu Issei. And this is Yudo Kiba. I am the carrier of TNK-01 and he is the carrier of HTR-00. The man upon hearing this statement would quickly change his attitude, slowly approaching the brunette and then hug him. So you're the new tank carrier, huh? The man would say as tears quietly flowed from him. Do you know? I knew your old carrier, he was like a father to me. I owe him a lot, I'll help you in whatever you need. This statement had created doubts in Issei and Kiba, which on that night could be answered. Chapter 3 A sad past and a good future. Night had already fallen. Issei was looking at the ceiling while trying to fall asleep. To achieve this, he decided to have a talk with his tenant. Hank, I have to ask you something. To which his tenant almost instantly responded. What's going on? Well, you see, what did BMR-05 mean? This question left the prototype thinking. Well, as you know, you weren't my first carrier. You weren't even my second. Also, as you know, my first carrier was your grandfather. Haidu Yado. Later, the plan was for your father to be the next carrier, however, since he had already been born and he had N''T died, so that I could get into his body, I decided that getting into another body would be a good option. I chose that of a baby who had just been born, right in the city. His name was Nicholas Smith. When I entered, he was barely a few minutes old, I thought he would be a good carrier. And boy, was he. Later, more specifically 4 years later, I showed up, I explained to him everything I knew and that therefore he should know. I guess it wasn't a very good idea to say it, I mean, he was 4 years old. As expected, he didn't understand a single word of what I said, so I let it go and didn't mention it again for several years. Until 10 years he had passed, I told him again, this time he understood better, but he flatly refused to go to Japan to kill people. At first I explained it to him again, making him understand that he had to do it because after all that was my mission from him, that was what I was created for. No matter how much I begged him, implored him to do it, he always refused, he always told me that he wouldn't kill anyone just because. While I was telling this, it was noticeable that Tank remembered it with some melancholy and a little sadness. Seeing that he was N''T going to change his mind, I decided to give in. I didn't insist anymore, but something happened. One day, in an unknown way, his parents died, which led him into a spiral of despair, but his ideal of not killing remained anyone. He was taken to an orphanage in terrible conditions. It had many parts full of mold, leaks everywhere, they took turns to sleep in the few beds, etc. But I have decided to change this. The following years, he dedicated himself to satisfying the needs of that place, which were many indeed. He became, so to speak, a Robin Hood who stole from the rich, but gave to the poor. Several more years passed. After having collected large amounts of money, he decided to leave the orphanage. While doing this, he came across something peculiar. He saw a child who was seriously beaten and on the verge of death, so he decided to help him. I have cured him, I have bandaged him. And he was BMR-05 or Alfred, since that is his real name. Quite a few years passed, they formed a father-son relationship. He taught him everything about the prototypes, since I am the second one who knows the most about this. Until one day, more specifically a year ago. A group of agents knew the address of Nicholas and Alfred. Due to all the crimes he had committed throughout his life, the police had orders to shoot to kill. This statement left Issei confused, shoot to kill. Hank read his mind, because after all he was there. Yes, shoot to kill. One of the people Nicholas robbed was the police chief. So to get revenge he practically had him killed. Or at least that's what he told the whole city. Issei, shocked by what he said, let his partner continue explaining. They came to the house, shot from outside, riddled it completely. Nicholas decided to stay behind, told Alfred the address of another house, and he left. Well, he left, Nicholas and I stayed behind. Because he never trained his body, he didn't do the same as you. His power was much lower, but he could fight back. Flashback. Of Nicholas. Alright buddy, it's time to show them what we're made of. I would say mentally to my partner, while I moved my right hand to my chest, just as I closed my eyes so I could scream. 01. After shouting it and closing my hand suddenly and opening my eyes in the same way, my muscles began to increase excessively, just as my eyes were bathed in blood. Alright motherfuckers, let's play. I would shout at them while leaving the house through one of the windows, starting to run against the police. They fired their various regulation weapons, which I dodged or received the shots, although they did not cause me significant damage. I would jump on one of them and hit him hard in the face, staining the white car behind me with his blood. As I turned around to continue fighting, a policeman would shoot me at point-blank range with a shotgun. The shot had hurt like hell, but without giving it much importance, with some momentum, I would hit him in the head with my forearm, killing him with a blow. I then changed my target to attack the nearest one. I would jump on him while he shot at me with his assault rifle, but his bullets did nothing to me. With the momentum of the fall and all my strength, I would manage to crush his head against the pavement. I was about to continue against the next one, but out of nowhere. A spear pierced my back and jets of blood began to flow out of it while it burned like hell. Buddy, we better get going, you won't last much longer. Hank advised me, but if I did, they would chase me and they wouldn't leave us alone. Negative, my friend, let's fight these bastards. I would tell him to abruptly pull the spear out of my back, then let out a roar of pain. I turned around to see three men with black hoods and wings lying on the pavement. His face was not visible, but I could feel his disinterest in me. Without further ado, I would jump into combat. The strangers loaded more spears into their hands. The one on the right was the first to throw it, with some difficulty I dodged it, but I would not stop at all. The other two would also throw them, I dodged one, but the other hit me squarely. However, enduring the pain, I would charge against him again. The one on the left would be the first, I attacked him with a blow from my right arm. He tried to cover himself with a magic circle, but my strength was such that I broke it and my attack hit its target. The blow was such that I sent him flying several meters, although I could not know the details of what else happened to him, since the other two were already attacking me. This time they both took flight, positioning themselves several meters above me, beginning to throw several spears at me in a row. As a reaction, I ran towards a vehicle, carrying it and using it as a shield. The car received the spears of light, while I continued to hold the car. Until I stopped feeling the spears clashing, which I took advantage of to throw the vehicle at them with all my strength, hitting both birds. But my wounds took their toll on me, the huge loss of blood was already affecting me, I lost the strength in my legs and fell exhausted to the floor. As I stood on the cold pavement, my transformation faded and with it my sense of pain returned. Dude, you lost a liter of blood. What the hell is wrong with you? Hank asked me, but I was too tired to even answer him. I shook my head slightly, watching as the other two I thought I had killed stood up. They were all badly wounded, but the bastards did it. They both carried spears in their hands, ready to kill me but… Stop. A voice was heard behind me. It didn't seem like a very scary voice, but it seemed to be respected by someone. "And tell me, what are you supposed to be? Do you have a sacred gear? Is it some kind of Longinus?" "No, there isn't one like that." I was just listening to him talk, my body couldn't take it anymore. If they didn't help me quickly, I would probably bleed to death, and you know what? I don't care. But okay, just ask me to save you and I will. The voice said, finally standing in front of me. I raised my bloody face and looked at him. He was a person between 30 and 40 years old, he had black hair, but the tips were golden yellow. His eyes were purple, and he had a small beard covering his chin. He was wearing a formal suit, looking like he was going to some kind of meeting. "And tell me, what do you think?" he said while bending down to get a better look at me. I just responded with a weak laugh, which released a small amount of blood. "Fuck you," I said as I raised my hand, and with it my middle finger of him. Following that, my hand dropped suddenly as I began to close my eyes, and finally a total darkness invaded me. Then Pav Nicholas. End of flashback. What happened next? Issei would say, intrigued to know more. Well, Nicholas died, and at the same time he appeared on the news, and they made him look like a vile criminal. Hank would say, somewhat angrily. Does Alfred know who killed Nicholas? Issei would tell his friend about him. No, they never said that. That answer was what Issei was looking for, he gave a sickly smile while letting out a laugh in the same way. Perfect. Somewhere else, several hours earlier. Aren't you going to talk? Riaz continued to charge her power of destruction, while the young boy was still very scared. Good. She added, to charge her power even more. Terrifying the young man even more. Okay, I'll talk. I would say completely panicked, to which Riaz would just give a smile and remove her power from her. So, who are you and what are you doing here? He would coldly say Riaz while crossing his arms and leaning against a wall. My name is Yukon. And I have a sacred gear. He would answer stuttering, to which Riaz would get closer to him. Do you know? I've never seen a sacred gear like that. Are you lying to me? She would start walking slowly in her direction, to which the boy would just back away, throwing away multiple utensils in the process. And yes, it's a sacred gear. Even more scared, I would continue talking. Do you know? I know perfectly well that you are a prototype. The fear that had been unleashed in the boy was incomparable. While he continued to run away he had tripped and fallen to the ground. Get away from me. I screamed desperately. But don't worry, I'm not going to hurt you, in fact. Be part of my entourage and I'll take care of you. He said as he bent down to be able to give her his hand. The boy was confused and with her face still scared, he didn't know what to do, so he just nodded and took her hand. Well and tell me, what are you doing here? Riaz would say after helping him up and looking at him in her eyes. Well, you see. I was about to explain everything when JCK spoke to me. What the buck are you doing? She's a demon, she's our enemy. And now she's going to be our ally. Don't buck with me. Outraged, a man of about 40 years old, almost 1.60 tall, although it was not possible to tell for sure because he was hunched over, claimed him. He had black hair, although in several parts he was missing the aforementioned. His eyes were bloodshot, he was wearing a sleeveless shirt and casual red pants. But Yukon ignored him. Well, you see, this is a laboratory where the father of the prototypes created them. And here there is a computer with all the prototypes. He said with a little uncertainty because he didn't know if he could trust her 100%. Alright Yukon. She said as she walked closer to him. Will you help me look for him? She said affectionately while ruffling his hair with her hand. Then they both went deeper into the huge laboratory. They explored it thoroughly, but they couldn't enter one room because it was closed with a very strong metal door. Riaz launched her best attacks, but all she managed to do was dent the door. But what they did find was the aforementioned PC. Okay, we can go now. Riaz would say bluntly as she walked out of the same stairs. No. You're a bucking idiot. JCK continued to demand from his bearer of him. You handed them all my father's research on a silver platter. No, not silver, all of my father's research was damned gold. Are you aware of the stupidity you've done? Enraged was an understatement because JCK was seeing things with anger. Relax, she seems to be good and trustworthy. I don't think she'll betray me, right? The blonde-haired boy said innocently, to which JCK just let out a loud laugh. Please, you can never trust a demon. Even more outrageous and angry, he would finally remain silent. When the two of them went out, they saw that it was already getting dark, to which Riaz asked. Do you have a place to stay? Yukon quickly shook his head. Alright, follow me. Riaz would say as they entered the forest. Last night. Somewhere else. Officer Winters was looking at different files on similar events. Until it was interrupted by a bright crimson light. From it, a young man appeared, with red hair and blue eyes. He was wearing unusual armor, but Winters didn't care about that. "Hello, Surziches," the officer would say as he turned around and looked at the newcomer. "Hello, Winters. I would like to say hello anyway." "Okay, I need you to see this," he said while moving for her to come closer. As he did so, he saw on the car's hood many photos of what had happened just a few hours ago. Surziches wasn't surprised because that was an understatement. "I never expected to see him again." "Well, do you know him?" Winters said, to which Surziches looked away from the images and saw the man. "Unfortunately yes, he is, or I think he is TNK-01, he is a prototype created for our destruction. As far as we know there are 4. TNK-01, WH-02, one that we don't know about, and JCK-04. Of WH-02 we only know his abilities, well we have already faced the other 2. One has enough strength to be able to tear heads off, as well as incredible agility. While the other, as you already know, has superhuman strength as well as resistance." Surziches gave the information he had. "Well, I asked my contacts to give me information, and boy did they give it," he said as he turned on his cell phone and showed him a video. This video is a year old, it happened in Houston, Texas. Apparently a group of police arrived at the location of a dangerous criminal. They arrived at his location with orders to kill him, but none of them managed to get out alive. They all died from causes similar to what happened here. He said in order to put Surziches in context, he then played the video of Nicholas's death. But at the end you could see how a spear of light was heading quickly towards the monster. But before it could hit, the video cut off. This information left Surziches stunned, as he didn't know what to say. Apparently, Winters hadn't noticed the spear of light and who had thrown it. Did Azazel or Michael know about this? But Winters snapped him out of his thoughts. "There's a flight to Houston tomorrow, it leaves at 7 a.m., although it's very early. I'm thinking of taking the 10 a.m. one, are you coming?" I would say while putting all the evidence in a briefcase. "Yes sure," Surziches would say as he watched Winters leave. The next day. "Well, here we are," I would say to Surziches while leaving the airport with a suitcase. This time, Winters was wearing jeans, a navy blue short-sleeved shirt and a pair of sunglasses. Behind him came Surziches, who was dressed in a black suit. "Well, welcome to Houston." Chapter 4 The beginning of the end. The attack reportedly took place here. Officer Winters was pulling a cigarette out of his mouth while driving a patrol car that he personally requested. Surziches was with him because seeing a being flying was not a very good idea, let's say, besides that he did not know the location to make a magic circle. Both adults arrived where they had been told. When they got out, they asked the locals what had happened months before. Several responded with "I didn't see anything," but one man answered what had happened in a very vague way and with non-existent details. But he made them understand that he was the one they were looking for. While they were obtaining that information, elsewhere 3 people were heading to an area quite far from civilization. These were Issei, Alfred and Kiba. "Well, from what you've told me, you have good control with your transformation, right?" Alfred said while Issei nodded. "You see, each infected person has the ability to clone their abilities and give them to others. This has a consequence because these new prototypes will be much weaker than the originals and they will not be able to return to their human form and will be ruthless and bloodthirsty beasts." This shocked the young men. Issei had read something like that, but he never thought he could actually do it. "Also," he continued, "I suppose you know that it is possible to create an army of the dead, right?" Issei agreed. "I also assume that you came with me first so I could help you with that, but for your information, I'm not interested in world domination, so I only brought you here so I could tell you this and advise you that if you're going to do it quickly, those bastards are already here," he said, causing a shocked reaction in both of them. Which caused them to look everywhere, in vain. Because there was nothing. "You see, another of my abilities is mind control. Anyone who has consumed my bile will be under my control if I so wish." And apparently, 2 guys, a middle-aged man and a younger one, but with red hair, came to ask about the death of. He couldn't finish because Issei interrupted him. "Nicholas. It's probably Surziches following me. But how does he know I'm here?" he said worriedly. "Alfred, I have to tell you something. I know the one who ordered Nicholas's death." Alfred just laughed and answered. "Everyone knows who it was the police chief. That bastard." He answered confidently, but Issei shook his head. "It's true that he was the one who sent the police team, but they are no threat to TNK-01. The true killer of Nicholas was the leader of the fallen angels. Azazel." This shocked Nicholas because he wasn't expecting this. "And how do you know?" "Easy." The brown-haired boy replied. "Hank told me. He was the one who gave him the coup de grace." Alfred, surprised, sat on the floor to reflect on what the brown-haired boy had just told him. So Boomer was right, those damn supernatural beings only create destruction. That's why we asked you to join us, with your help we could end the supernatural much faster. Issei added, to which after a few minutes of thinking about it, Alfred responded positively. Alright, I'll join you. But before I go get the others, I want to see how strong you are. He said as he closed his eyes and put his hand in front of his heart. He then opened them suddenly, while closing his hand in the same way. 05. He shouted, and his body fat increased greatly, and several bulges began to appear. And so, these three began a brief sparring match. Meanwhile, in Japan, Riaz had flown Yukon to the occult club. Well, we can talk more calmly here. Riaz said, entering through the main door, then letting Yukon sit on one of the armchairs and he began to talk. So what do you want to know? Yukon said. So what are prototypes? Well, the prototypes are souls created by the scientist Andrew Carrying. I have created them with the purpose of destroying all the supernatural, because I have considered them scum. This didn't excite Riaz, because she already knew some things, although the last thing did leave her thinking. There are 7 of us in total, and if the 7 of us get together we have the power to end the factions. I mentioned, alarming the Reddit a little. Although, getting us all together is almost impossible, because the only way is with a computer in the laboratory where we had previously been, but as you saw, it was not found. This is something interesting, but what power does each one have? He continued asking, to which Yukon only shook his head. I don't know that, because the only one with the exact knowledge is TNK-01, since from what I know, he was the favorite of scientist Andrew. This disappointed the Reddit, but she continued talking. Well, now I have a proposition for you. He said as he took out 8 pawns, 1 knight and 1 rook. I can join you to my clan. He said happily as he took 4 of the pieces. And what would I get? He said distrustfully, to which you laughed in a sweet voice and responded. You would be part of my guild, which would lead to you becoming a demon. Gaining its abilities. He said, while mentioning each of these. After hearing the advantages, I innocently accepted. Okay. As he extended his hand to the Reddit, who shook it. While that was happening, in Yukon's head, a certain spirit was going crazy, trying to get out of his mind and kill him with his own hands. Riaz then cast the spell, and 5 of the 8 pieces entered her body. Congratulations, you are now part of the Gremory clan. She said with a big smile as she raised her hand, to which Yukon took it. On another continent. Shit. Winters said as he hit the steering wheel of the vehicle, frustrated at not being able to find the monster. Calm down, maybe he's not here anymore, after all he died several months ago. He tried to calm his partner, but he just shook his head. According to my research, that Michael's mother was from Kuo City, the same city where Yado Haidu appeared. It means that she must be here. He said frustrated, not noticing the obvious holes in his idea, because he didn't take into account that someone born in that city could be an heir. Although he doesn't currently live there. But their conversation was interrupted when the police radio in the car range. All units, a SWAT team was sent to deal with a drug shipment, however we have tried to contact them, but they are not giving any answers. They probably need reinforcements, this is the address. Although it was obviously not his responsibility to go, Winters turned on the car's sirens and headed to the address. In the place. What do we have here? Winters said as he got out of the car. And you are? Said a pink-haired girl, who seemed to be in charge. I am Captain Winters, and this is Serzic as my apprentice. This surprised Reddit, since they had never agreed on something like this. But without giving it any more importance, he let him continue. Oh yeah. I heard about you. Well, the SWAT team disappeared, but there are no traces of anything. It's like they were swallowed by the earth. The girl told the man, while this was happening, Serzic saw a kind of slimy slime on the floor. Somewhere else. I didn't think capturing them would be so complicated. Biba said exhausted, while carrying one of the policemen to a cell. Stop crying, we've only just begun. Issei answered, who unlike Kiba, had been there for 2. Okay, I think I got it. Alfred said as he arrived with a syringe. He entered the cell, where one of the policemen had already woken up. The latter tried to get away from Alfred, but he couldn't do much, since he was injected with all the green substance. Well, this should be enough. He got up from the floor, where the man was now screaming and yelling in pain. Will he be okay? Biba said somewhat worried as he watched the policeman write it. In theory no, because your body is receiving very high doses of the virus, so it is a matter of minutes for it to transform, and with the help of my bile, you will be able to infect healthy people simply by sharing fluids. He said proudly of his creation of him, while the policeman finally stopped moving. Now he got up and ran towards the 3 young men who were outside the cell. And why did you want these policemen? Alfred said with his arms crossed. When the time comes, I want to make sure that the whole world is plunged into chaos and despair. He said with a sickly smile as he watched the policeman begin to convulse. If they are smart, as soon as they see the alert of a new disease, they will close borders, but by the time they do that, they will already have the virus on their bucking faces. He said as the policeman stopped moving and now launched himself to attack the three boys who were in front of him, although stopped by the cell bars. "Okay, inject the substance into the rest, we're leaving for Canada today," said the brown-haired boy as he turned around, followed by Kiba, leaving Alfred alone. One day later. The day before, a lot had happened. Winters and Surziches joined the investigation of the missing SWAT team, while at the same time continuing to search for TNK-01. Meanwhile, Issei and company had left for Canada to search for one of the prototypes. And they do it like that. Canada. Let's do this quickly. Issei thought, then got off the plane and went for the SPT-06 prototype. And so they did. They walked for several minutes until they arrived at the place. The three saw a building with a series of apartments which they entered. They asked about the woman whose name they now knew, which is Vanessa. As they walked, they saw the structure of the building, which was quite normal and nothing out of the ordinary, something that surprised them, since they expected to find it in worse condition. Until they arrived at her apartment. They knocked on the door and were answered by a woman. This, unlike the expectations of the three, this was a very beautiful blonde girl. She was a little shorter than Issei, with green eyes and hair that reached a little below her shoulders. Can I help you?" Vanessa said, to which Issei replied. "You're SPT-06, right?" The girl, scared, quickly got the three men into her house. Once inside, I grabbed a knife that was nearby. "How the hell do you know that?" he said menacingly while pointing his gun. "Hahaha. Please, let's fight in another way." The brown-haired boy spoke while moving his right hand to her chest and he looked at her threateningly. "My name is Issei, but you can also know me as the bearer of TNK-01. The girl, astonished, continued talking. "So if you are a carrier." She didn't finish because Issei answered her question before she finished asking it. "Indeed, they are too. This is BMR-05 and this is HTR-00. He said while pointing at each one respectively. "HTR-00? I've never heard of it." He approached Kiba while examining him from head to toe. "Well, you see, it's because HTR-00 was Scientist Andrew's personal prototype," the blonde said. "Wow, and what did you bring here?" he said as he stopped looking at the blonde and left the knife where he grabbed it. "Well, you see, we want to put an end to everything supernatural and for that we need the help of all the prototypes, so we've come to ask you to join us." The brown-haired boy said kindly, to which after a few seconds in which the blonde thought, she answered. "Okay, I'll help you." Everyone, now relieved with the answer, left the place to be able to go get the rest. At the same time, a blonde boy was walking with a redeed towards the academy. "Is it okay for me to go to your school, President?" "Of course you can, the student council did the paperwork and you have outstanding grades, you're going to enter as a prodigy." This surprised the blonde because he wasn't like that in the least. But, without giving it more importance, I accompany the redeed to her new school. Hours later. "I didn't think it could be this difficult," Yukon thought as he leaned against his table, catching the attention of a white-haired girl not far from him. Afterwards, as Riaz had told him, he went to the club room where everyone was already. "Who is he?" the Kendo said in amazement at seeing a complete stranger. "Hello, my name is Yukon Benz. I'm your newest member." This statement left the entire room's mouths open, except for Riaz, who obviously already knew. "He is our new partner and my new pawn," said the redeed, surprising those present. "Nice to meet you," the boy said, with a big smile. "On another continent. There's no point, we can't possibly find him." Resigned, Winters walked with Surziches, who was in no better shape than his friend. "I can't believe we came all this way in vain." Surziches reproached the black-haired man, who just sighed. "You're right." Their conversation could not continue as the loud airport speakers mentioned their flight, prompting them to board. 1 month later. "You know, I'm starting to get used to this," the blue-haired man of normal complexion said while still lying on a bed. "Same here, I thought this place was going to be shit." The tall, muscular purple-haired guy supported him. Issei made all the reforms, we should have more faith in him." The white-haired girl counter-argument happy this. "It's time." Tiba had entered the room, which led the three of them following him. After a walk through the laboratory, the four arrived with Issei and Alfred, as well as Vanessa, who is eating a sandwich not far from there. "It's time for my revenge." Chapter 5 The First Blow. I didn't think they would cause me so much trouble. Issei, clicking his tongue, walked through the facilities, accompanied by Kiba, who only expressed seriousness. "Anyway, Kiba, tell the rest that the time has come. I will meet with Alfred and Vanessa in the main laboratory." Kiba just agreed and did as he was told. Both of them separated. On one hand, Issei took the path to the laboratories, while Kiba went to the bedrooms. "Where the hell are you, JCK-04? The brunette thought, frustrated because he had been looking for the aforementioned for quite some time, who had completely disappeared from the radar. Not a single trace of him. "Any news?" Issei asked after entering the laboratory. "No, not a single one." Alfred answered, who looked at the PC in front of him, seeing all the points that marked the prototypes in one place, although there were only 7 of them. "It's like he died." Vanessa entered through another door to the laboratory while holding a very well-made sandwich. Although of course, if he had died, the new carrier would have already appeared. She said, then took a bite of her food and sat not far from the other two. "The other possibility is that he became a demon, but I do N''T think his carrier is that stupid." The door Issei came through opened, watching Kiba and company arrive. "It's time for my revenge." Issei thought, then turned around and saw the 4 people. On one side was Kiba, who was leaning against a wall. Meanwhile, the other 3 were just standing. "Well, JCK-04 still hasn't shown up, so the plan will be put into motion without him." "And what is it going to be?" "The only thing you told us were the preparations, which was to gather everyone in the laboratory." The blue-haired man asked seriously, to which Issei happily answered. "Well, you see, Samuel. The plan would be delayed until everything is ready, since there are several steps missing, but we have to do it now, since the door that leads to this part of the laboratory has several marks, as if someone wanted to enter by force. It is obvious who, so they are already on our heels. SW. He said, then taking out a map of Kuo from one of his pockets. "You see, here is the Kuo Academy, where the base of the dominant demons of the area is. The Gremory clan and the Leviathan." He said, while taking out a yellow marker, beginning to mark streets. "Your mission, Samuel and Pavel, is to kidnap several people and leave them in the sewers, where I will take care of converting them." After saying this, he folded the map and gave it to the blue-haired boy and the purple-haired boy. "For now, that's what they'll do. When the time comes, I'll explain the rest." Both boys nodded, heading towards the door they had come from. Time after. "The sewers must be down here." Samuel, young, 17 years old, blue hair, with short and well-groomed hair, having green eyes. He has an average height of 1.70, wearing blue jeans, a white short-sleeved shirt and an unzipped leather jacket, a pair of boots that reached the middle of the lower part of his leg. This was the carrier of SMK-07, which had the ability to entangle his opponents with a tongue that reached more than 3 meters. This was strong enough to quickly pull a person of more than 50 kilograms. Although his danger was not his prototype of him, but his intelligence of him. Well, thanks to this he was able to earn a living in the slums of Warsaw as a swindler or hitman. But, although his intellect was his main weapon, it was not the only one. This is a great hand-to-hand combatant, in addition to having an admirable precision. On the other hand, Pavel. He is a 26-year-old man, he is 1.90 tall, he has long purple hair as it reaches his shoulders, in addition to having it somewhat disorganized. His eyes are abella-colored. He wore a red short-sleeved shirt with small cyan blue details. He also had denim shorts, along with a pair of gray tennis shoes. This one, like Samuel, is the bearer of a prototype. In his case, to CHR-03. Which was an aberration of more than 2.30 meters. Narrowly surpassing the tank, since the latter is always hunched over. Although his main characteristic was not his size, but that his right arm was stupidly larger than his left arm, which could not even be compared. This one used to attack his adversaries with great ferocity and power. Leaving aside his prototype, he has a fearsome physical strength, as he is capable of throwing a person weighing more than 70 kilograms into the air. However, his intelligence is not his strong point. He earned his living as a boxer in street fights in the slums of Moscow. Come on, Pavel. There's work to do. I put the map away to prepare to walk on one of the streets marked by Issei, but… Oh, sorry. A short blonde boy with honey-colored eyes ran into Samuel. He was wearing a school uniform that neither Samuel nor Pavel recognized. "Don't worry, I was a bit distracted too," Samuel said, continuing on his way, followed by Pavel. The boy stared at them for a moment, then ran towards the Kuo Academy. "Oh shit, the president is going to kill me," the boy thought as he ran. On the other hand, Samuel and Pavel had already reached their goal. "You know, we would have kidnapped him," Pavel said, but Samuel just laughed and answered him. "He's just a kid, if we go after him the authorities will move heaven, earth and sea to find him. Not an adult," she said, finally stepping onto the floor of the sewer, while Pavel also began to go down, but not before covering the entrance. "I guess you have a point. Anyway, I finished going down, then the two of them walked through the disgusting place." 5 minutes later. "Well, here it is." They came to a door, in which Samuel inserted a key, then turned it and activated the mechanism. They both entered the place, seeing a large number of empty cells, more specifically 40 cells, each of which can hold 6 people. Okay, then. Let's get to work. Pavel said, so he could go out and do his part of him. The next day. I guess this is the last one. Pavel slammed the door shut, the sound echoing throughout the room. Let's warn Issei already. This damn place is suffocating me. Samuel said to his friend, who took out his cell phone and made the call. After a talk with the chestnut, they were ordered to strike the first blow. Outside the Kuo Academy. 6 p.m. Could this be any more boring? Samuel said while throwing a small stone in front of him, to which Pavel, arms crossed, said. I doubt it. I snort, now wearing a different outfit. Because instead of his summer clothes, he had black jeans, a pale orange t-shirt and a beautiful aviator coat. But, a girl's voice caught their attention. Hey guys. A beautiful pink-haired girl was approaching them. She was just shy of 5 feet tall. She was wearing a dark red miniskirt, a vanilla-colored long-sleeved shirt, and a pair of high boots that reached just below her knees. She is Emily Andrade, a rather shy 15-year-old girl, born in Great Britain. Unlike her friends, she was born into a wealthy family and in a good social position. But, studies were never her thing. Because she didn't measure up to them, in addition to the constant pressure from her parents and acquaintances, she ended up suffocating her, running away from home at age 12. During the time she was alone on the streets of London, she managed to survive thanks to her prototype. WH-02. This one is a bit peculiar. Because, despite its weak appearance, it has enough strength to cut someone in half. Well, her strength is not her only ability, in fact, it takes a backseat compared to the rest. First of all, she has inhuman resistance, as she is able to receive several shots without even suffering damage. Although, her resistance is not the same as TNK-01 or CH-03, as with the third charger, she already does enough damage to make her flee. But, almost no one reaches the third charger. Well, she has 5 claws in each hand, which are capable of tearing, destroying, crushing or piercing the body of any person. This blessing as she calls it, helped her survive. Well, being from a very well-known family in the city, she was the target of many mercenary and criminal groups. If it weren't for that power, she would be dead, kidnapped, or would be forcibly prostituted. Well, she is mind-blowingly beautiful. Well, what's the plan? Pavel said, to which Samuel responded with a smile. Well, you see, my friend, there is a certain group of people who are a danger to this operation. He said, taking a photo from inside his coat and tossing it to Emily, who took it. And he is. He said, looking at the photograph of a man over 40 years old who was entering a restaurant, accompanied by a redeed and 2 agents who could not be distinguished. He's Captain Winters. A very capable and competent agent. He said something worried, to which Pavel just laughed. Are you really worried about a simple human? Shouldn't we be taking care of Surziches, the other 3 Mayu, Azazel, Michael? They are better targets than a simple captain. He said, to which Samuel just clicked his tongue repeatedly, making him understand that he was wrong. He's not just a captain, he's the captain. He said worriedly, then took out a piece of newspaper from one of his pants pockets and threw it, which Emily took again. Captain Winters, one of the most important agents in Japan, rescued a SWAT group in the United States. They had aggressive characteristics in cannibalism, in addition to their skin color being grayish and having bumps on their bodies. This is already being investigated, and from what is known it is some kind of virus. The article continued, but Emily stopped reading and turned to look at them worriedly, to which Pavel only turned around without admitting that he was wrong. And they'll say, what are we going to do now? If he already did it, there's no point in chasing him because he can screw us even more. This caught the attention of his companions, as it made them come out of their thoughts, giving him all their attention. You see, now for what he did, he's recognized worldwide, and he even created a team that's under his command. It's complete madness. He said something frustrated, but it wasn't over yet. But, not everything is lost. In 1 or 2 months he has met with several representatives from each country. If we let him meet with them, he'll tell them about us. And if we have the whole bucking world after us, finding JCK-04 will be impossible, besides our plans will also become impossible. So, it's a bet. We have to avoid that meeting, because if we don't, Winters will have all the money in the world to hunt us down. He straightened up, took his things from him and walked to the Kuo Academy, but Emily stopped him. Is it even possible that they would believe you? Simply saying that there are 8 people with powers beyond our understanding is absurd and unrealistic. They will take you crazy. Besides, if we don't use our powers, he won't be able to know that we are the users of the prototypes. Besides, how are you so sure that he will pursue us? He said, trying to convince himself that that couldn't happen, but Samuel just sighed, and without even turning around, he answered him. Emily, he has already gained the trust of the governments. In addition to the rescue of the SWAT agents, he was in several tests to find missing people that were imposed by most governments. And you know, I have passed each one with honors. That son of a bitch is better than Sherlock Holmes. He said desperately because he knew the danger he represented. Besides, they've already seen infected people, it shouldn't be difficult to believe him, that. And finally, your second question. He is a friend of Serzich's Lucifer, the only one who knows the exact location of the laboratory. Once the whole world gives him the green light, that will be the first place he will go. And, I'm sure he will. Because he was assigned this case 2 months ago. Thanks to that case he went to the United States in search of answers, and once he has a case, he doesn't stop until he solves it. He said, and before Emily could say anything else, he foresaw it. And no, burning everything down won't solve anything. All we do is throw all the research down the drain, and we'd only be able to give them more clues. Oh, and moving everything isn't necessary either. The electricity bill, the noise, the material. Everything we do draws attention, but of course, being in a forest in the middle of nowhere, no one notices. He had left Emily completely silent, who just looked at the floor. So, what's the plan? Oval said, and Samuel continued to speak. Guo Academy. 7 a.m. Students of all ages are arriving, right? Oval watched from an alley as many students headed to the academy that was just a few meters away. Yes, I'm surprised there are so many so early. Samuel said, following him through a door in one of the alley walls. The blue-haired boy was once again wearing different clothes, this time wearing a school uniform, which was exactly the same as the ones of the students who passed in front of them. Do you really need me to go with you? Emily's voice came from behind the door where Samuel came out. Please, it's not that bad. Samuel said, taking her by the arm and dragging her out of her. Just like Samuel, she was wearing the same uniform as her friend Ella, except hers Ella was the female version. Can you repeat this plan for me? Oval said, as he continued to watch the young students pass by. Oval, Pavel. You never pay attention, do you? Sarcastically, the blue-haired boy said, receiving a somewhat angry sigh from Pavel. Very easy, what better way to investigate some disgusting demons than in their own territory? Emily and I will infiltrate as exchange students from the United Kingdom. I will be in the last year, while Emily will be in the first year. Well you will keep watch where Issei told us was their meeting point. The abandoned building. While saying this, he finished fixing his tie at the same time that Emily fixed her hair too a little. Okay, let's go. Oval told them as he took out a pair of sunglasses and began to light a cigarette. Both teenagers left the alley to blend into the crowd. Several kilometers from there. Do you think it was a good idea to leave such an important mission to the newcomers? Biba said while throwing a foam ball into the air, then catching it without difficulty. Forks. Issei said while he kept writing something on a PC. If you or I go, it's obvious that they will discover us. If Alfred goes, maybe Azazel can recognize him. After all, that bird investigated Alfred and Nicholas. Well, I need Vanessa here, she's quite intelligent and is very helpful to us. He said to finally finish writing and get up from the chair he was in. Our chances of success depend on those three. If they fail in their mission to kill Winters, everything will go to hell. Issei thought while admiring one of his creations, which fed on a dead animal. Don't worry, soon you'll be free. Chapter 6 Trust is everything. This is awkward. Emily whispered to Samuel, who was only greeting women in a very flirtatious manner. Don't worry, I can get used to this. Samuel said very happily as the two finally entered the main building. Once inside, they both split up, each going to their respective rooms. Please, guys, be quiet. The teacher asked his young students about him. They obeyed. We have a new classmate, why don't you come and say hello? After this, Emily entered the classroom, where she attracted the attention of all the students, especially the men, because her beauty was incredible. Although mainly two people. A white-haired girl and a blonde man. Both of whom were watching the pink-haired girl attentively. Kaneko, don't you feel something strange about her? Yukin said, to which the aforementioned curious girl turned to look at him. What are you talking about? Nothing, I just had a hunch. Yukin changed the subject because he had felt as if he knew her, although of course, he had never seen her. Hello, my name is Emily. It will be a pleasure to meet you all. She happily but shyly introduced herself, capturing the hearts of men as she seemed extremely pretty to them. Well, since you introduced yourself, you can sit next to Kaneko. Without giving it much more importance, the teacher said to the pink-haired girl, who nodded and sat where she was told. In another part of the building. Nice to meet you. My name is Samuel. I hope we get along. Unlike his friend, Samuel appeared very confident and sure of himself, something that also captivated his audience, but in this case the female one. Fine, sit wherever you want. The teacher indicated to him, blushing slightly because his mere presence was captivating. And just like with the pink-haired girl, the young man caught the attention of two women. One with a black hair and one with a red hair. Time flew by for the two of them, as it was time for their break, the most anticipated moment for all the students. Both boys were eating while talking. "Did you discover something?" Samuel said to her little friend, who shook her head. "I only noticed Kaneko. But she didn't act strange or out of the ordinary. The only thing was a boy Yukon, I think that's his name. He kept seeing me throughout class and he seemed close to Kaneko." "Why too?" Emily finished her report, now asking about Samuel's. "Well, leaving aside the harassment of my colleagues. Nothing more," he said, finishing giving his information to her in a very fast and resounding manner. But, a small detail that escaped them was that Asia and Zenobia were watching them, although due to the distance, it was impossible for them to know about the conversation they were having. "They're watching us, right?" Samuel, without turning around, said to his friend of him, who agreed. "They must be from the occult club, those bitches must already suspect that we're up to something. B, we're users of a sacred gear, or C, we're just curious. What will we do? Let's hope it's C, so we can continue with the plan," he said, and then explained the next part of his perfect plan. "When classes are over, you will become friends with Kaneko, ask her to take you to the occult club, and there, you will reveal your power to them." This puzzled Emily, who didn't know why showing her power to her enemy Ella, and why she said that becoming friends with Kaneko was something easy. When in reality it was the opposite. I was about to ask a reason for this when Samuel stepped forward. "I suppose you'll ask why, right?" Emily's surprised face gave him the answer Samuel was looking for. Every good business is based on trust. What better way to gain trust than revealing your aces up your sleeve? With a very proud smile, she explained to her friend the reason for everything. "While you become friends with Kaneko, I will do the same, but with Rias and Akeno. And remember this, trust is the most important thing. If they don't trust you, will you also show them your prototype?" Samuel just clicked his tongue, making it clear that he was wrong. "Showing all your aces is no good. If anything, I would only show him my other skills. What if he does N''T let us join him unless we're in his clan? I don't want to become a demon." Emily said a little worried, to which Samuel, after taking a sip of his drink, answered her. "I don't know, I'll think of something." Samuel finished telling his plan, just as the bell made its respective sound, implying that the break time was over. "Well, good luck." Emily was somewhat dissatisfied with the blue-haired man's last response, and he only responded with an giving her a somewhat vague positive response, then got up from his chair, grabbed his jacket and left the place. When will it change? Emily thought and then got up from her place and walked to her living room. Once he got there, the first thing he did was talk to Kaneko, who was just sitting there eating a sweet. "Oh, hello." He approached the white-haired girl in a friendly manner, and after a few seconds she noticed his presence. Kaneko didn't even flinch at the pink-haired girl's presence, frustrating her a little. This wouldn't stop her though. I spoke again, this time trying to bring up some topic of conversation, but it was all in vain. "Hi, you're Emily, right?" Yukon arrived at the living room, seeing the two girls talking because in reality, only Emily did. "Hi." Emily said somewhat reluctantly, as she didn't know about the small detail that Yukon was also part of the occult club. "Kaneko, did the president tell you anything about the club?" Without giving much importance to Emily, Yukon spoke to her clubmate and classmate. She just shook her head. "Wait, are you from the occult club?" Emily said somewhat excitedly, to which Yukon, somewhat surprised by her reaction, answered and asked. "Yes, why?" But that question, Emily remembered her friend's words from her, so she answered him shortly after. "I would like to speak to your president in private." This was quite suspicious, and the one who was most suspicious was Kaneko, who didn't smell anything good in this. Time after. The day had passed without any incident, just a normal day of classes. But the really interesting part was just around the corner. "Before we see the butchu, I need to ask you a few questions," Kaneko said, as she was taken to a more secluded place. Once there, Kaneko began. "What are you?" This caused a pink-haired girl to sigh, as she simply closed her eyes, brought her open hand to her chest, and screamed. 02. She then slammed her hand shut and opened her eyes in the same way, watching as they were bathed in blood. In addition to his eyes, his body mass decreased drastically, while the nails on his fingers lengthened, reaching a point where they changed into claws. Very long and dangerous claws. His height increased slightly, going from his 5 feet to 1.60 meters. This change alarmed Kaneko, who didn't know how to react. "Get back," Yukon said, standing in front of Kaneko, who was in shock. He was about to transform in the same way, only he was stopped by Emily. "Relax, I'm not here to hurt you. In fact, I'd like to join you." This stunned the two of them, who after looking at each other for a few seconds, they sighed. Indeed, Kaneko and Yukon took her to the occult club where they received a new surprise. "Oh Kaneko, Yukon," Ria said in surprise. She was sitting on one of the club chairs. She was also accompanied by Akeno and someone whom neither Kaneko nor Yukon knew. This was Samuel, who only resigned himself to taking a sip of his cup of tea. "By the way, this is Samuel, a new classmate of ours," Ria said, while the named one stood up and put his arm behind her neck in such a way that he hugged her using only one arm. "Indeed, and now that most of us are here, my partner and I wanted to propose something to you," Samuel said, stopping hugging the redhead and now taking Emily by her arm and pulling her towards him. "You see, my friend Emily is a bearer of great power, while I have a fearsome precision." This scared Riaz, who was in shock. However, Akeno was not the same. She quickly stood in front of her president in a defensive manner, but Kaneko stopped her. "Calm down. They're not against us." With her typical emotionless tone of voice, she calmed her friend down, letting Samuel continue talking. "Thanks," Samuel told her before continuing. "You see, my friend and I are mercenaries. We work for the highest bidder and blah blah blah. The point is, you guys seemed nice to us. So we decided to join you because the lack of work bores us too much." Samuel said. This surprised them, causing Akeno to relax more because she wasn't completely relaxed before. "Are you serious? Is that there?" Ria said a little confused, while Samuel nodded in response to her two questions. "Well, it would be better if we do the ritual as soon as possible," Ria said, but was stopped by Samuel, who clarified. "But, since we are mercenaries, we wouldn't like to be demons. We will help you, yes, but not as your subordinates. Or well, at least not as your pieces. We want to maintain our humanity," Samuel finished saying, making Riaz, somewhat confused, turn to look at him. "But like that I couldn't trust you 100%. Well, let's change that," Samuel said, then lifted the sleeve of his uniform, revealing his forearm. "If you like, mark it, we won't be demons, but we will have the mark of the Gremory clan with us." This surprised Riaz, because if they were traitors, they would not have such determination to leave themselves marked for life. "Okay, I'll do it," Riaz said a little nervously, as she had never done anything like that. For his part, Samuel just had a face full of confidence and security, although Emily was doubtful. "Come on Emily, do it quickly, we don't have all day." Samuel heard his friend, who, although somewhat unsure, complied. She also lifted the sleeve of her uniform and revealed her forearm. Riaz continued, thus magically marking them both with the Gremory symbol. Later, to finish trusting, he entrusted them with a simple mission. The elimination of a renegade demon, which, according to the abilities of both of them, would not be much of a problem. "Ouch, it still hurts," Emily said as she looked at her scar. "Was this necessary?" "Of course, otherwise they wouldn't trust. Remember that. Trust is the most important thing, I already know that." Samuel didn't finish his sentence because his little friend interrupted him and finished it for him. "Are you at least going to use your prototype?" Emily asked, to which Samuel just put his index finger in her mouth and then blew, giving her to understand that she should shut up. "It's obvious that they're following us. It's probably Kaneko, from what Issei said, Riaz always sends her on chase missions. Showing it in a fight while she's spying on us would be revealing something that at the moment of truth will be of utmost importance." Samuel whispered to her the situation, which Emily understood perfectly. And in fact, it wasn't far from the truth at all. Because about 10 meters behind them, Kaneko was spying on them. "Now, act normal for the rest of the way," he finished saying, and then went back to talking about trivial things that were not in the least bit important, and that in fact, the only thing they did was increase their credibility as mercenaries. Time after. "This is it," Emily said as she arrived at an abandoned warehouse. "Well, let's start with this," said the blue-haired man, taking out two electric blue 9mm Glock 19 pistols with black details. At the same time the magazine came out of the grip twice as long as it originally measured, implying that the magazine was modified so that each magazine could fit 34 bullets ready to hit their target, in addition to a flashlight that was under each barrel. For her part, Emily limited herself to just transforming, giving her characteristic scream and her subsequent change. Once they were both ready, Samuel kicked the double doors open. He then pointed his two weapons at the entire place. Because of the darkness, Samuel turned on his gun flashlights to illuminate the entire area. And so he did. When he turned on his lamps, he saw it. A putrid creature that was eating something on the floor. Emily screamed to get his attention from her, succeeding in causing him to turn around, looking at them menacingly. "Okay, go ahead," Samuel said, starting to shoot with both weapons, while Emily ran to have a close combat. Indeed, Emily got close enough for the demon to throw a punch, but thanks to Emily's speed with her transformation, she stopped the blow with her claws, causing deep cuts on the abominable being's knuckles. As the creature held onto her badly damaged hand, Emily took the opportunity to bury her claws into her abdomen, then kicked it and threw it several meters ahead of her. Samuel had taken advantage of that little encounter to reload his weapons. Once they were fully loaded, he rushed to the front line, relieving his friend of him. With the help of a pile of scrap metal, he pushed himself up and jumped, gaining great height. Once he was several meters above the ground, he began to fire his 2 pistols, using up the magazines, each of the bullets hitting their target without missing a single one. The badly injured creature tried to attack Samuel, who had already landed on the ground. But Emily got in the way, digging her claws into the creature's arm, piercing it and, with Emily's strength, tearing it off. Now the demon, badly wounded, tried to flee, but Samuel, with new magazines, riddled the bastard's back. "Well, I guess we're done." Emily came up behind us, while Samuel just put his weapons away from him. "Indeed, we're done." After this, he turned around and walked to the exit, being followed by the pink-haired girl. 1 month later. During that time, the two had done jobs with which they had gained the trust of Riaz, who trusted them blindly, although until that moment they did not know Yukin's abilities of her. While they were doing this work, Pavel had not sat back. He had taken it upon himself to get a team of mercenaries, the best on the planet. In addition to having studied every damn corner of the building where the meeting would take place. As some of you know, or maybe not, my brother entrusted us with the mission of escorting his friend, Captain Winters. Riaz said to her entire clan, including Samuel and Emily. "Where will we see them?" Zenobia asked, although her tone of voice was distrustful, since she still did not trust the newcomers 100%. "In a cafe, there we will meet the captain and his team, where we will escort him to the meeting with the representatives of each country and begin the investigation to find the other prototypes." With an arrogant smile he explained his plan, causing displeasure in the blue-haired man, although he did not show it. "So are we leaving?" Samuel said, in order to get out of the place as quickly as possible, since he couldn't stand to stay a single second closer to the Redeed. "Of course, walking." The Redeed finished saying, as she left the club. In front of the meeting point. "Can you tell us the plan again?" One of the many mercenaries told Pavel, who was in the place of the driver of an armored truck, although disguised as a bank-armored car. "Easy, I'll open a gap and as soon as I give you the signal, you shoot at everything that moves. Except them." The Russian said, throwing him 3 photos. One was of Winters, while the other 2 were of his companions. "You can shoot the older man in the leg, but don't kill him." The mercenaries, who were 10 in total, agreed, waiting for them to arrive. They didn't wait long, because soon Winters and his team arrived, while behind them the Gremory clan. "Let's go." Pavel opened his door, while the mercenaries opened the back door, then crossed the street and entered an alley behind the cafe. "Oh, hello, Captain. Nice to finally see you." Riaz formally greeted the agent, who returned the greeting in kind. "Well, the important thing is that we've already met. Now, it's best to ask for something, since the meeting will start in a couple of hours." Winters had planned to continue talking, but behind him a wall was suddenly broken. This caused everyone without exception to stand up, each pointing their respective weapons. 02. Emily screamed, while Yukin was going to do the same, but Akeno, as if she were her mother, put him behind her. Once the smoke cleared, the terrifying CHR-03 lay there, its right arm covered in plaster and dust. "It seems to be another prototype. Hands up and you won't get hurt." The leader of Winter's team shouted, but almost instantly, behind the prototype, the mercenaries came out, firing their weapons. On the supernatural side, they only limited themselves to taking cover, although this caused them to split up. On one hand Riaz, Kaneko, Akeno, Yukin, most of Winter's team and Samuel. They hid to the right, in one of the corridors that led to the exit. While on the other side, there were Winters, Asia, Zenobia, what was left of Team Winters, and Emily hiding in a hallway on the left side, one that led to the bathrooms. "Hand over Winters, and we'll let the rest go." Pavel shouted in a grave voice, and his response was only gunshots and magic attacks from his opponents. "As you wish." The Russian thought, giving the order with his arm to continue attacking. The peaceful cafe had become a battlefield where everyone was attacking except Kaneko, Emily and Samuel. For Emily and Kaneko, it was understandable, since they specialized in close combat. And going out in the middle of an exchange of fire would be suicide. "Samuel, do you want to shoot?" Riaz, somewhat angry, complained to her subordinator. He just lowered his gaze, then burst out laughing. "What are you laughing at?" I didn't finish, because Samuel unsheathed his weapons. And with 2 shots he did his job. Chapter 7 The Plan in Motion. Kaneko fell to the ground with a bullet lodged in her skull, giving her instant death. while the other bullet pierced Akeno's leg, which fell to the ground writhing. Samuel grabbed Ria's by the hair to drag her towards him. Once he had her next to him, he put his left arm around her neck, placing himself behind her and using her as a human shield. This caused Emily to spring into action as well. I launch an attack at Asia, piercing her stomach, watching as her claws pierced her, as if she were a simple sheet of paper. Zenobia tried to attack her, but Emily easily stopped her attack, deflecting her sword and kicking her strong enough to send her flying several meters. Now he just took out his Asian claws from her, so he could turn to see the Winters team, who were terrified. The second in command of the team was the first to come out of shock, pointing her gun at the woman, who did not even move, as a shot went through her forearm, causing her to drop the gun, and she fell writing. Samuel continued with his shooting, now giving covering fire to Emily, who took advantage of this to take Winters and go with the blue-haired man. Although the black-haired man resisted, in the end the pink-haired woman took him away. As Emily ran toward Samuel, a scream was heard. More specifically, 04. After this, Yukon with the help of his prototype, tried to attack Emily, but something grabbed him by the ankle. This was the tongue of Samuel's prototype, who once had Yukon, with tremendous force he crashed him into a wall behind him. I didn't think he was a prototype too. Samuel said, while still holding Riaz, who in shock at seeing how her friends had died, did nothing. You are a lot of damn people, I trust you, and this is how you pay me? ROT. Riaz yelled at the blue-haired boy, then spit in his face. Now you know what it feels like, don't you? To have given everything, to put all your trust in someone, only for them to spit in your face. Samuel used his free hand to wipe his cheek, which was where the spit had landed. Riaz didn't understand her words about her at first, so to clear her doubts about her, she shouted again. Who do you work for? I yelled at the blue-haired man, who only let out a very loud but short laugh. I think you know him very well, but I prefer to leave you a clue. With his hands he took a small knife from his belt and now began to make cuts on his occiput. She just screamed because the cuts, despite being superficial, were deep enough to leave a very noticeable scar. Samuel, let's get out of here. Aval shouted while the mercenaries attacked the survivors of Winter's team. I was just having fun. Disappointed, he put away his knife and decided to remove his transformation from her, since in face-to-face combat, it was pretty useless. Now that Samuel is back to normal, he released the Redeed to go with his companions. What do we do with Yukon? He's 04, Issei must know. Emily turned to see the blue-haired boy, who without even turning to see the blonde-haired boy, answered the question. Leave him alone, if his wounds do N''T kill him, he won't N''T be a problem. His prototype is the weakest. He let out a very loud laugh, which was heard by everyone. Are you done with your little number? If so, let's get out of here once and for all. Aval, already detransformed, hurt them, causing Samuel to walk alone to the hole that Pavel had previously created, followed by Pavel, who was carrying Winters, Emily and the remaining 4 mercenaries. After they left, the deputy commander of Winter's team stood up, while on the arm where the wound had previously been, there was now only a bloody piece of cloth. I walked towards the Redeed, who hadn't gotten up. She was there because she still had a hard time analyzing everything that had just happened to her. She was betrayed by people she trusted, several of her friends had just died. But she had to find out who she was responsible for all this. The woman approached the Redeed, who was trying to get up. Miss Gremory, are you okay? With her other hand she continued to hold the cloth on her forearm while walking slowly. Quick, what do you say? I shouted desperately, then gathered my hair and pointed to the area with the signature. Without understanding much, she accepted and began to read. Issei. He read with difficulty, because it was difficult to read. Riaz, confused, thinking that what she just heard was a joke, asked a woman to repeat it, saying Issei again. But now she said it more fluently. Riaz in shock still didn't believe it. Is this the Issei I know? Riaz asked herself these kinds of questions in her mind, as if a divine force was going to answer them. Although it wouldn't come. Without saying a single word, she got up from the ground and walked towards her friends who, although badly injured, were still alive. Several kilometers later. Don't you think it was reckless of you to say Issei's name? Emily, who was in the back of the armored vehicle, said to the blue-haired man, who only took a box of cigarettes out of his jacket and then took out a lighter from another pocket, causing the cigarette to light. After inhaling the smoke it produced and then removing it from her body, he answered the pink-haired man. Not at all. He opened the window on his side to let the smoke out. In fact, he asked me to do it himself. This baffled the woman, who knew the brunette quite well, and she knew that it was almost impossible for him to make such a careless move, especially at such an early point in the plan, since the virus was far from perfect. Why would Issei do something like that? It doesn't make sense. Pavel joined the conversation, reading the girl's mind of her, who only turned to look at him with a relieved face because she couldn't have said it better herself. I know, I was surprised by him too, but I guess he must have something on his mind about him. In the time that had passed, Samuel had been smoking his drug, now throwing the butt out the window. Time after. The vehicle stopped several kilometers before the entrance because for something so bulky and heavy, it would be impossible to cross the dense forest. The 3 prototypes and the few remaining mercenaries got off the truck, so Pavel could now take Winters and get him off the truck. Winters was handcuffed, although the cuffs on his feet were far enough apart that he could walk. He was also gagged, preventing him from screaming. After walking a little, they reached a hatch, which Samuel opened, letting his companions enter first, and then doing so himself. Once they were in the underground facilities, they advanced until they reached what Issei likes to call test rooms. These were 5x5 meter cubicles, completely closed and only with a large window that allowed the interior to be seen. Despite the large number of these, each and every one of them was empty, even though they looked like they could fit at least 8 people in each one. After passing this area, they arrived at the main laboratory, where Issei and Kiba were waiting. Oh, I see you have visitors. The brown-haired boy said this while looking at Winters, who was forced to sit by Pavel on a chair that Kiba brought over. Issei, for his part, got up from his seat and walked to a table not far from there. Forgive the conditions in which they brought you, it's just that we honestly don't trust you. He took off his lab coat, hanging it on a nearby coat rack. Taking it off, he revealed his clothes, which consisted of a white long-sleeved shirt, being partially covered by a black formal vest, which had blood-red details. As for his pants, they were suit pants, which matched the vest. After that action, he walked a few steps to approach a coffee maker. The brown-haired boy took a cup, although before doing anything else he asked his guest if he also wanted one, which he refused with a cold face. I honestly wouldn't have had any plans to do anything to you or your group of incompetent henchmen. As he said that, he filled his cup with a dark liquid. Once the cup was half full, he used a spoon to pour 2 tablespoons of sugar into his coffee and dipped the spoon into the cup, then began to move the metal object as if it were a vortex. He turned around and walked towards the agent. Once he was a few meters away from him, he took a small sip of his drink to prepare himself and speak again. But you don't choose your friends well. He said calmly, and now, from one moment to the next, with brutal force, he smashed the cup of coffee into the black-haired boy's face, who only suppressed his desire to scream, because the cuts caused by the cup and the boiling coffee were enough reasons to scream in total agony. Although, in order to avoid showing weakness, he did not complain. It seems you are more resilient than I thought. Issei said, now about to continue having fun. But, a thick and rough voice spoke. I don't want to be rude, Mr. Issei, but we would like you to pay us already, since we have other jobs to do. The leader of the mercenaries said to the brown-haired boy, who only sighed. Alright, your money is behind that door. Take it and get out of here at once. Without giving it much importance, Issei pointed at the door, causing one of the mercenaries to open it, thus entering the 4 of them. Upon entering, they saw that it was a completely white room, which in the center had a small table with a briefcase. Good. One of the mercenaries walked to the small table and opened the briefcase. When he opened it he was surprised to find that it was empty. But when he opened it, the door they had entered through slammed shut. The leader ran to the door and started knocking on it. What the hell is going on? Open the damn door, brat. In complete desperation he screamed and banged on the hard, heavy steel door. Oh, well. You guys actually know too much, it's dangerous to just let you go like that. So you can consider yourselves lucky for sacrificing yourselves for a better world. Issei started laughing, then clapped his hands as he watched Kiba pull a lever, causing several ventilation ducts to open in one of the walls, causing gray smoke to begin to be expelled from them. The 4 of them covered their mouths and noses, trying to avoid inhaling the gas, but it was useless, since it had already entered. Little by little, the 4 of them fell to the ground and began to convulse. Blood was coming out of every orifice in their bodies, and new ones were forming on their backs. Shortly after, each of them began to grow in muscle mass between seizures. What the hell did you just do? Winters, still not understanding what he had before his eyes, began to move to try to escape. A simple experiment, I had plans to try it on you, but now I see that it won't be necessary. In fact, you're of no use to me anymore. Issei took out a revolver and without even looking at him, fired the powerful weapon, causing a very large hole in his skull, causing blood to jump and splash almost everyone except Kiba, since he was too far away. Emily, shocked by the brutal scene, just looked away, while Samuel avoided showing his face of complete disgust. While Winter's murder had been carried out, in the room in front of them, the mercenaries could be seen slowly getting up. Now having a much larger muscle mass, enough to have torn their clothes and bulletproof vests. Although not as exaggerated as Issei's with his prototype of him. They had also grown, as they were now at least 2 meters tall. When they got up, they began to hit the walls as if they were caged beasts, although in reality they are. Okay, my new toys are ready, next phase Kiba. Issei ordered the aforementioned, and he just obeyed. A new gas flooded the room, causing them to fall to the floor, completely and deeply asleep. Now, Kiba took some silver necklaces with blue details from a shelf next to the levers. I opened the door and approached the men to put them on. Once they had them, the blonde left the room. Okay, continue with the plan. Issei ordered again, so that everyone present would leave the room. Wow, this has been the best idea of my life. It's time for those bitches to remember me. Chapter 8 Problems. After Winter's kidnapping, Riaz and company returned to Hell, where Surziches was waiting for them, since he already knew everything about what happened. Iridid entered the mansion quite depressed, although being received surprisingly by Surziches. Riaz, are you okay? The man ran towards his sister, then hugged her. Well, she didn't move a muscle. It's Issei. Between a choppy sigh, she said to her brother. Iridid, confused, asked him to repeat it, and so he is doing, leaving him speechless. He just walked away from his sister and sat down in a nearby chair to analyze the situation. At the laboratory. Everything is ready, Issei. Kiba entered the laboratory where Winter's body still lays. Issei was drinking a new cup of coffee while appreciating her creations, which looked like statues. It's about time. Issei left his cup of coffee on a nearby table and approached her friend so he could whisper something in her ear. Start with phase 2. Are you sure, Issei? Our virus is far from even being considered completely lethal. Kiba disagreed, to which Issei only ordered him again. Kiba, with no other choice, went to Vanessa and Alfred, who worked at the school. The next day. Day 0. Apparently a strange disease has appeared in Kuo and its surroundings. So far it is known that it is not lethal, however the medical team is already working on the circa. A reporter was giving the news, however Surziches turned off the television, preventing her from finishing giving the note. In front of the eldest Mau were the other Mas and the leaders of the biblical factions. Why did you summon us, Surziches? Ajuka asked the aforementioned, while he only answered. As I suppose you know, there are prototypes. Weapons created by the scientist Andrew carrying with the aim of destroying us and blah blah blah. This is not a secret to anyone, and much less to you, Azazel. The demon pointed at the fallen angel, who only responded by raising his right eyebrow. And why me specifically? Easy. I know from good sources that you took care of the TNK-01 prototype. Am I wrong? Surziches confidently answered him, causing Azazel to just turn away. Phew. And yes, it was like that, but what does it matter? After all, he's already dead. The black-haired man said nonchalantly, to which Surziches just shook his head. At the time yes, but not now. Have you met Issei? Those present turned to look at him confused, as that name did not sound familiar to them. Ah, I know who you're talking about. A pawn of your sister, am I wrong? Azazel with a smile full of confidence said to the Retid. Actually I like chatting with him, but what does that have to do with it? Well. Surziches turned his eyes away so he could take a few pictures. In these, the main entrance of the laboratory could be seen, as well as the hatch, which he knew of its existence, thanks to Riaz and Yukon. According to our information, the prototypes have resurfaced, and now they are all together. Little by little, Surzich's voice revealed his nerves about the situation they were going through, because in reality it was somewhat stressful. So are we going to raid this place? Ajuka took the photos, receiving a yes from Surziches. Then for what reason did you speak to us? This is more of a problem for you than for us. Michael, noticeably annoyed, complained, which led Surziches to take the remote control. The disease that appeared in Kuo a few hours ago was discovered to be highly contagious, and the affected people have been rushed to the local hospital as they had breathing difficulties, convulsions, and multiple bleedings. Several of them are in a fight for their lives. This would have continued, but Surziches silenced the television, as now he was going to speak. This disease is not normal. A pathogen so contagious that appears overnight with no apparent antecedents seems too suspicious to me. And in the investigation we did after killing Professor Anders, we discovered a pathogen which was barely in its first phase. Obviously we destroyed this, but it doesn't seem far-fetched to me to think that this is Issei's fault. This made those present turn to look at him in confusion. So what do you plan to do? Serafal worriedly said to him, causing Surziches with a serious expression to place a map on the table. I plan to go investigate the laboratory, but obviously we will go prepared to fight. Surziches explained his plan, but stopped to raise his head and look at the other faction leaders. This is where you come in. According to the information my sister has, we know that all the prototypes are there. We will need a large number of troops to be able to attack them. Both Michael and Azazel turned to look confused because they didn't know what to do until. What the hell is going on there? Ajuka pointed at the television that was still on, causing everyone to look in that direction, and Surziches returned the volume to this one. The footage showed people with extremely pale skin leaving the hospital and beginning to attack people near them. Several police officers nearby quickly asked them to stop, but they ignored them and attacked him instead. Shortly after, more of these things came out of the hospital and continued attacking anything that moved, causing the officers to start shooting at them. That was what I was afraid of. Issei decided to create an army of undead. We must destroy that laboratory and get rid of them once and for all. Seeing such images, the other two leaders just agreed, then retreated and went for their troops. The next day. Day 1 after the first outbreak. Issei, the outbreak in Houston has already been released. It's a shame that the SWAT team was eliminated early, they would have been an important reinforcement. But it's still a matter of time before the country falls. Alfred said while looking at a screen on which the news of the North American country could be seen. Same in England, it was a great idea to leave a little trace of the virus there. Vanessa said, while doing the same as Alfred, only on another screen and watching the European news. Although her tranquility was interrupted by the slamming of the door against the wall, implying that someone had entered, this was Emily who looked upset. They discovered us. She said in a halting voice, as she found it difficult to breathe. And so it was. Outside the lab, although at his head were the faction leaders, the Gremory clan and the Citri. Sons of bitches, they came fast. Samuel was at the top of the mountain, accompanied by a trusty bolt-action rifle. Samuel, are you there? Issei's voice was heard through a walkie-talkie. Of course. I'll just tell you that the situation here is bucked up. I would recommend escaping through the back door as soon as possible. Samuel said this in a serious tone of voice, but still giving that mocking air. At the same time he said it, he looked through his peephole, appreciating the situation much better, which as he said. It was bucked up. No, if we leave, they will destroy all the research. Including the sub-prototypes. We must contain them until we manage to extract the information. Issei said, causing the blue-haired man to click his tongue. Permission to shoot. Samuel said simply, causing the brunette to smile. Granted. Samuel put his rifle on his shoulder and aimed at the one who seemed most important. Surziches. Meters ahead. Surziches, everything is ready. Serafal told the Redeed, who just turned to look at her ready to give the order but. Surziches, be careful. Ajuka shouted, launching himself at the aforementioned and causing him to fall to the ground. Microseconds later the sound of a gunshot was present, causing everyone to turn in that direction. Surziches, a little in pain, looked at where Ajuka was, noticing how he now had a hole in his head, so that shortly after Surziches saw that, his body fell to the floor. Completely dead. This triggered Azazel and Michael, somewhat disgusted, to order an attack on the laboratory. It was already quite obvious that something was hiding there. Well, I missed a shot, but I killed another one. Samuel said to himself before lowering his weapon and speaking into the communicator. I fired the shot, I killed one, I thought it was someone important. Issei clicked his tongue, then asked about who he had eliminated, so Samuel could describe Ajuka. I don't know who it is. But from your description it seems like someone important. Good job, go back to the base, we must defend it as much as we can, while Alfred and Vanessa gather the information. Issei told the blue-haired man, who after seeing how they began to attack the door, answered. Okay, over and out. He lowered his rifle to his waist, now returning to base. At the entrance. All the prototypes were already placed at the entrance ready to fight against their enemies that threatened to enter. The only ones who were not there were Alfred and Vanessa, since they were in charge of gathering information. Hibba, on my orders, released the sub-prototypes and infected. The aforementioned just mentioned, while continuing to look ahead. The door had been quite resistant, in fact too much. This was thanks to the fact that Andrew had once had an ally in a renegade demon who with magic managed to make the door 3 times stronger. Thus preventing the supernatural from easily entering. Although of course, within a few minutes it was destroyed by the magical attacks of dozens of beings. After knocking down the door, they saw how the little sunlight illuminated a few 60-year-old vehicles, as well as wooden and steel boxes. Surziches ordered a group of 20 demons to enter. Although fearful, they complied. After advancing a few meters and noticing that it was safe, they returned with Surziches although. As they tried to do so, 3 fast beings attacked them, knocking down 3, while the other 7 only had their jugulars cut. The remaining 10 attacked the beings in fear, which received the attacks, but quickly escaped. What the hell was that? Serafal was confused and looked everywhere trying to find the perpetrators. Although without success. What if Issei was betrayed and imprisoned and takes revenge? Movie cap 8 problemas. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.